Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the inaugural APRU MetaGames Conference. This is the second day of programming of the Digital Entertainment Forum hosted by Cyberport. To our honorable guests and online viewers, welcome. I am your host of the day. My name is Lulu Ma. We will have an exciting program today, which we will be featuring policy discussions on the emerging Esports hub in Hong Kong, covering important topics related to diversity and inclusion, growth of the industry, and strategies on how we can work together to build thriving esports hubs across the Asia Pacific. Our range of distinguished speakers come from Hong Kong, Mexico, Singapore, and USA to share their insights. We encourage you to actively participate in the conference to ask questions during the sessions by simply scanning the QR code on the screen. Also, don't forget to share your experience on social media and tag us at #DELF2020 at APRU1997. To kick off today's event, we would like to invite Mr. Peter Yan, CEO of Cyberport Management Company. Mr. Peter Yan is the Chief Executive Officer of Hong Kong Cyberport Management Company Limited. As the CEO of Cyberport, Mr. Yan leads the digital technology flagship to focus on fostering talent cultivation, industry development, and integration of the new and traditional enterprises to realize Cyberport's vision to create new impetus for Hong Kong's new economy through digital technology. Mr. Yan, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Christopher, esteemed speakers, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the inaugural Association of Pacific Rim Universities Esports MetaGame Conference. It is Cyberport's pleasure to co-host this meaningful event as part of our Digital Entertainment Leadership Forum. We are honored to be part of this important conversation to explore how Hong Kong can be an emerging esports hub in the region. A key focus of Cyberport is to cultivate talents in innovation and technology, especially to the younger generations. We have a growing community of 150 startups in the Cyberport digital entertainment and esports community among the 1,600 companies that we have at Cyberport. And we have really very young talents also here fulfilling their entrepreneurship dream. Esports is a fast-growing industry in the world and Pacific Rim that brings exciting new opportunities to our youth. And at Cyberport, we strive to ignite the passions in young talents through the games and competitions of esports. For them to excel in innovation and technology and to be successful in the society. With the strong support of Hong Kong government providing funding of over 100 million Hong Kong dollar, we have built mid-sized state-of-the-art esports arena that you see today here we have, and developed various industry facilitation programs to fund esports events, competitions, and talent development through internship. The MetaGame Conference marks the first partnership of the many cooperations that we will have with APRU, and through the APRU Premier Network of leading research universities all over the world, we hope to extend together our voice of innovation and technology entrepreneurship throughout Asia Pacific. I extend the warmest welcome to APRU in joining the Cyberport community, and we look forward to many more exciting collaborations with your members and like-minded, impact makers. Once again, it is our honor to co-host the Esports MetaGame Conference with APRU, and we hope you enjoy the exciting lineup today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yan. We now invite Dr. Christopher Tremuin, Secretary General of the Association of Pacific Rim Universities. As a network of leading research universities linking the Americas, Asia, Australia, and the Pacific, the Association of Pacific Rim Universities, APRU, is a voice of knowledge and innovation for the Asia-Pacific region. It brings together thought leaders, researchers, and policymakers to exchange ideas and collaborate on effective solutions to the challenges of the 21st century. Dr. Tremuan, please.
Thank you. I welcome you to the APRU MetaGames Conference in partnership with Cyberport, Hong Kong. We are deeply grateful to our host, Mr. Peter Yan, CEO of Cyberport, for including this international conference as part of the Digital Entertainment Leadership Forum here in Hong Kong. This is a step in building a longer-term partnership between us for esports in Hong Kong and in the Asia-Pacific region. For many people, the idea that an international organization of 56 leading research universities from Asia and the Americas would be interested in esports might seem a little strange. To understand why we are committed to esports, just think about these points. First, esports is changing society. It is not just gaming, it is a new medium, a powerful new way of interacting socially, like Facebook was when it started and when few realized its future. Secondly, it is up to us to make sure it is socially beneficial and economically productive, not only as an industry, but in the many applications it can have beyond it. And we have to look ahead, and for that, research is needed, as well as closeness to the players and the industry. By some estimates, and these may be very conservative, around 2.6 billion people are engaged in some way with online entertainment through video gaming, and more than 400 million are known to be involved in esports. In many universities, we estimate that 70 to 80% of students are involved in some way. And we find also, and most importantly, that students are already the innovators and leaders in creating the esports ecosystem. And I have met many talented student leaders from esports. Their ecosystem includes competitions, educational programs ranging from the sciences to the humanities and social sciences, research into the phenomenon and its social implications, and its potential for use for social health and problem-solving global challenges. Programs for diversity and educational pathways to other careers are also key to the ecosystem. And employers are increasingly interested in the skills that are required by teams under heavy pressure, making decisions, and the scientists want to know how the brain functions in these circumstances. As a team sport, it therefore has many spin-offs for how we relate to each other. And esports is often seen as a gold mine of prize money for high-achieving individuals, but these are comparatively few. Also, the business model is by no means established, and the professional life of top players is often very limited. Even the technology we see today is in the early stages of development, despite the punch it delivers already. How do we elevate esports as a sustainable industry with a better career trajectory and many future opportunities in related areas? How do we ensure diversity and equity among those who play and elevate it above its toxicities? In short, how can we as universities contribute to building the esports ecosystem? As an international network, how can we increase the connectivity across borders among students, researchers, and administrators, and do this from our base here in Hong Kong? These are some of the questions this conference will discuss today. The ways we need to partner with business and government to encourage, develop, and also regulate this transformational way of interacting. APRU is privileged to have a member with a global reputation in pedagogical leadership and educational technology, Tec de Monterrey, Mexico. Professor David Garza, Executive President and Rector of the Tec de Monterrey system, is a member of the APRU Steering Committee, a wonderful contributor to many of our initiatives, and now will lead a very important initiative in student leadership, which I will leave him to announce. We are most grateful to him. And I conclude by thanking Mr. Peter Yan and Cyberport again, and also CMGE, GG Tech, the Internet Professional Association, YEAR, and MedHead. I also thank our APRU members and speakers, in addition to Tec de Monterrey, the Chinese University of Hong Kong, the Far East Federal University of Russia, Keio University in Tokyo, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, the National University of Singapore, Shanghai Jiao Tong University, University of British Columbia, the University of Washington in Seattle, UC Davis, UCLA, the University of Southern California, and Yonsei University, Seoul. I wish you all the best for a productive conference. Thank you.
Dr. Tremuwen, may we please invite you to stay on stage, as we would like to welcome Mr. Peter Yan again on stage to take a group photo with you. Thank you so much. Thank you. May I now invite Professor David Garza, Executive President and Rector of Tecnológico de Monterrey, to share a special announcement with us. Professor David Garza is the newest Executive President of Tecnológico de Monterrey, and throughout his 30 years of service at Tech, he has occupied several academic and executive positions, such as Director of Research and Graduate Program, Dean of Information Technology and Electronics, and Dean of Engineering School at the Monterrey campus. Professor Garza has a bachelor's degree on computer systems from Tech of Monterrey and a PhD on computer science from the State University of Colorado. Professor Garza, please.
Thank you very much. Greetings, hola, saludos, greetings from Mexico. It's a pleasure for me to be here interacting from Mexico in this important event. Since 2019, we have been working with APRU and its members in the creation of the University Esports International Initiative. With this initiative, we are willing to develop integral esports programs at each of our universities in order to improve the experiences and outcomes for our students. At the same time, we are also building an international network that will shape the future of this transformational industry through research, leadership development, and global community building. As one of the key components of the University Esports International Initiative, we, as Tecnológico de Monterrey, are leading the fellowship program. And today, I'm happy to announce that after months of work and unexpected changes due to the pandemic, we are launching the first global esports fellowship program. The fellowship program offers students across APRU universities the chance to engage in international global exchange with their peers in support of the growth of healthy, vibrant esports communities and to become the future leaders of the esports industry. The students will be involved in virtual peer-to-peer learning experiences through the one-year time span. During this time, We are expecting to create an immediate and lasting impact on student communities by connecting them and their communities across borders, placing them in internships and jobs, develop leadership competencies, and expand student-led campus initiatives. The fellowship program insists that the students explore the whole esports ecosystem to create a bigger impact. That's why during this year, we will be working on topics such as diversity and inclusion in the esports industry, overview of the esports ecosystem in an international context, career and skills development in esports industry, developing esports league and community, esports in a virtual world, psychological impact of esports, gaming for social good, just to mention a few. Tecnológico de Monterrey, APRU, and Cyberport will join in partnership to launch the APRU Esports Fellowship Program. The collaboration will include student-led workshops with experts and entrepreneurs to provide mentorship and international esports tournament in collaboration with the startups and industry giants. And finally, connecting fellowship participants to internships and job opportunities. We are expecting to cultivate an alumni network that is accretive to both the fellowship and APRU esports participating universities. And each year, making this esports community even bigger, stronger, and continue developing the future leaders on the esports industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Garza, for your special announcement from APRU and Tecnológico de Monterrey. We know our students will benefit throughout Asia Pacific. We will now move on to our keynote address. This session will be moderated by Ms. Etta Wong, Director of USC Hong Kong. Ms. Etta Wong is the Director of USC Hong Kong International Office, Strategic and Global Initiatives. In her capacity, she is responsible to work collaboratively with all USC professional schools for admissions, academic programs, alumni, and parents' development. She's also the primary ambassador to develop the university's relationship with both private and public sectors in Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area. She will be joined by Professor Anthony Borges, who is the Assistant Professor of Clinical Entrepreneurship at the Martial Arts of Business from the University of Southern California. We will have a Q&A for the session, which you may simply scan the QR code and type in your questions during this discussion. Ms. Wong and Professor Borges, the stage is yours.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning to all of you in Hong Kong and Asia, and good evening in the United States, Canada. My name is Etta. I'm the Director of Hong Kong office for USC. So today we have great speaker and topic. The topic that we are going to talk about will be esports, the future trends. Anthony Borges will be our today's keynote speaker. What we will be talking about will be the current trends of esports and gaming in the US and the world, how emerging technologies such as big data, AI, machine learning, and even now the pandemic 2020 that we are encountering right now will make the new game changer. I'm very pleased to introduce my colleague, Anthony, my Trojan colleague from LA. So let me give you his experience background. He is the founder and CEO of Grab Games, a digital entertainment company founded in 2010. The company specializes in VR, AR, mobile games, app development, freemium games, and social games. Prior to GAP, Anthony was the founder and CEO of Label Interactive and Spatial Technologies, both a mobile software company, which later being acquired by leading industry players. Besides his exciting entrepreneurial journey, Anthony is active in esports. He himself is the board member of the Team Envy, one of the world leading esports organization, winner of 2016 Esports Team of the Year. Besides this, he is also the adjunct faculty at USC. He currently teaches technology entrepreneurship, video game production at USC Business and Engineering Schools. He's definitely a loyal Trojan. He received his bachelor, master, and doctoral degree all from USC. While we are waiting for his presentation, please feel free to type up your questions anytime in the Q&A, and we will come back to you after his presentation. I'm not really a gamer. I remember my time when I played Nintendo. That was many, many years ago. But I'm sure that technologies change with the VR and AR and how gaming will evolve. I will now let our keynote speaker answer all these questions. Please join me to welcome Anthony now.
Thank you so much. I am hoping that you could see my screen over here. I have an indicator that the screen is on, so I hope you do see that. And it is a pleasure to be here to talk to you about esports, future trends, and also talk a little bit about the game industry. And it was a very exciting announcement to hear about the Esports Fellowship. If we talk about trends, that's hopefully a trend that we'll continue to see is education adopting esports and other forms of interactive entertainment. It almost reminds me of the game industry in 2003 when we taught our first class on video game production, and 17 years later, games and education has become quite a global phenomenon. But yes, thank you again for the introduction and talking about my background. I did want to say, I got into the game industry 20 years ago because I wanted to build games. Back then, there wasn't an educational track. I actually wanted to go make big console games, but at the time, it's really hard to break in the industry without a lot of experience. I'm sure a lot of viewers here, a lot of students, whoever it is, you may want to break in, but you need some kind of skill set. You need some kind of way of breaking in. My route to get in the game industry, I leveraged mobile technology. I had some background in mobile. I didn't have console experience, so I thought maybe we could put games on mobile phones. So we were really early at it. And the challenge was I started this new company. I was going to raise money, but I can never raise a full round of financing because most of the investment community didn't believe that people would play games on phones because how small the screens were and the processing limitations. And I kept grinding that business out for 3-4 years. We started making money, but reinvesting it back in and trying to raise money the whole time. The company was later acquired by Konami, Digital Entertainment. But I think the story is we're all trying to find ways of breaking in the industry, and it's all about grit and perseverance and trying to find unique ways to do something that's a little bit different. So I hope that's one message that people take away from this talk, because esports is right at the cusp of where I was 17 years ago trying to break in the industry. There's so many things happening and so many opportunities. I hope we shed some light on what some of those could be. Some of the games I've worked on, as Etta mentioned, being in the industry for a while, you span platforms. It's been console games, mobile games. We've done VR games as of late, and now we're working on PlayStation 5 games. and being very, very active in esports. I've run an esports fund where we've invested in 12 different companies, and I've been involved with an esports team, a few of them over the years. And I do want to let you know we have a special guest tonight that has made himself available. This guest is a professional, was a professional gamer, and has built and run one of the most exciting esports organizations in the world. And when we start talking about specifics around running esports organizations, growing esports organizations, and opportunities there, we will be talking directly with one of the world leaders. So that'll be an exciting coming up in about 10 or 15 minutes. But real quick, I want to talk a little bit about our program at USC. We have an entire division around games. The whole school has really rallied around this concept of USC Games. The people I'm about to introduce to you, they have this entrepreneurial mindset. They had this thirst to get in the games industry, and they've all used their creativity, their entrepreneurship, to create products and really get traction in the market. Here's Asher. I'm not sure if any of you played Threes. This was a game I loved, a casual game that really took off. Asher was one of our students, but really had this creative nature. Kelly Santiago, as part of her master's thesis, she partnered with Genova Chen. They built 3 games that when they were in school, they signed a deal with PlayStation. And again, this is years back, and it might even be a little bit easier today to get some of these publishing deals. But just because you're in school does not mean that you can't build product that could reach commercial audiences. They ended up building 3. The game Journey was Game of the Year in 2012, up against a lot of AAA titles. So really proud of their creativity and their vision into gaming. And I just mentioned Genova. Genova was actually one of our teaching assistants when he first started at USC, a creative genius. His latest game is called Sky. Maybe some of you have played that already. But Genova came over from China and spent time in our department and really left a lasting impact. I believe one of the things that he has is this great artistic expression and also this way of conveying emotion in games. That was really what his passion was about. And of course, a lot of you out there are familiar with Riot Games and League of Legends. If you really think about League of Legends, it has really catapulted esports over the years with this large player base. We were fortunate to have Brandon as a student. I had him actually as a freshman and as a senior. He took our first class on video game production, and then 2 years out of school, launched Riot Games. And the rest was history. But a couple other people I want to talk to you about. Ari was actually one of my students. She was a designer. She did incredible work in the classroom. We hired her to come work at our game company as a UI, UX designer. But on the side, she would stream Halo. She was a streamer early into those days. We had the pleasure of her working with us for a couple years. She left and went to go start her streaming career. And she is one of the biggest brands in the industry. She goes by Ammunition. Here's a shot of her, but there is this amazing opportunity for females, for males, for whoever, if you're able to take your passion, be authentic. And she has built an incredible business for herself. There's also Sean Plott, one of our students, who is a content creator. Sean, he also is at a lot of events. He covers lots of events, goes by Day 9. So Sean also took his passion for gaming and was able to use some of those communication style skills, content creation skills, and was able to kind of find his niche in the esports industry. So again, a lot of different people that have passions for games or esports and finding different ways of building your careers around it. We also recently launched a varsity team at USC that's playing esports, and we do see the pathway for students to come to USC on scholarships for gaming in the future. And we're starting to see that happen already. But a couple things before we jump into our really deep conversation around esports management. Let's talk about just a few quick trends. First off, just so we're all on the same page here, some of you that are new to esports, if we take a look at the esports ecosystem, you could see that we have, at the very far left, we have teams, Fnatic, Envy, Cloud9. These are all the teams that are playing games, that are competing for prize money, that are streaming, that are catering to these large audiences that are following them. So in addition to the games, we also have the leagues and tournaments. We have professional leagues like the Overwatch League and the League of Legends Championship Series, the Call of Duty League, and we have ESL and these other players that are running tournaments. Then of course, there's the viewing platforms like Twitch, YouTube, and a bunch more that are coming to the market. And of course, we're delivering all this experience to the fans. The stakeholders that are involved with esports include publishers, but also brands and advertisers who's trying to generate reach and get after this audience. And then finally, people that are investing in teams, tools, technology, companies like Bitcraft. So this is it. This is in a nutshell. It's much more than just games. Esports is about tournaments. It's about streaming. It's about content creation. It's about advertising. It's about investing. And of course, there's the option of building games and publishing games. But I think there is what this presents as an opportunity for many of you to jump in at various capacities. This is a quick slide I wanted to share with you regarding pre-COVID in February. We had earmarked consumer spending that we were hoping to stay consistent through September. And you could see what's happened here in March. Gaming has obviously exploded with people at home, people spending more time on digital platforms. And we're seeing just this massive surge, which also means people are viewing games as well. If you take a look at the total share of entertainment investment, there's been a 3% increase in 2020 from total time. And then also a 4% increase in total share. This is of all the entertainment that people are consuming or purchasing. And then finally, we have almost 80% of US consumers that are playing video games. That's up 6% from 2019, 246 million gamers, up from 228 million last year. And they're playing mobile games. You can see mobile still on the rise. PC is up. Consoles up, and then others would be platforms like virtual reality, augmented reality, etc. So these are just some high-level stats that we're seeing that obviously Etta had talked a little bit about the COVID situation, but we are seeing opportunities that have arisen for gamers and people in esports. A couple other things I wanted to pull up and talk about. One of the big trends is you no longer have to start a game 10 years ago and spend all this time building an audience and investing, years and years of money into these games. With things like Among Us, you could have smaller teams. You could leverage platforms like Discord, platforms like Twitch to reach a massive audience where you could get 100 million users or 100 million downloads in a relatively short period of time. If you look at that entire ecosystem that I shared with you before. So this is a really exciting trend. We've also seen it with a game like Fall Guys. Not only are these IPs being streamed, but if you think about how they're being played, there's cross-play where you could play on a PC and pick up on a Switch and maybe play on mobile. Fortnite really has done an exceptional job at that, but it's cross-play. It's cross-platform. So people are now developers. You don't have to have separate teams that are building for PlayStation 5, Xbox, PC, mobile. You're able to leverage these game engines to be able to write once and deploy everywhere. I mean, obviously with some optimizations, but that exists today. And then of course, progression. You could pick up and play from any device. So that's really been one of the trends that we're seeing that's been extremely successful in the industry, which is also, adding to this extended playtime from consumers. And of course, viewing. We talked about distribution. Among Us had an incredible lift when it was picked up on Twitch. Same thing with YouTube. We have these platforms now that are attracting audience and really engaging them. Hard not to look at cloud gaming too as another trend. What I find really interesting with cloud gaming is if you look at that use case with YouTube, a streamer or somebody from a professional esports team, they could be playing a game, and the ability for a viewer to jump in, download, or not even download, but play instantly with somebody, it's a whole new level of discovery, and it's going to drive that much more engagement. We're not sure how much yet. It's still very early, but this is definitely something on the horizon that we're seeing with Google, with Sony, with Microsoft, with Amazon, with NVIDIA, just to name a few. But cloud gaming is certainly a trend that you should all stay close to and keep an eye on. And of course, publishing opportunities. What Epic has done, and they have this free game of the day, free game of the week program, and just providing consumers more value to use this as a destination. And of course, there's Steam and a wide series of app stores from all the different platforms as well. So publishing is becoming more prolific. I would also say user-generated content. These game engines, as well as tools that companies provide, if you think about League of Legends and you think about the Dota category, being able to mod games, to be able to create new experiences for player bases, it's really continuing to evolve. And the ability to use these tools, a lot of you that are in school, a lot of you want to pick up some new skills, being able to jump into Unreal, being able to jump into Unity allows you to create experiences that rival experiences of bigger companies, because no longer you could use this ray tracing technology, for example, as a way to really, have stunning visuals inside your game. And I really want, this is probably the last example I'll bring up before I want to introduce our guest speaker, is interactive viewing. Think about how the viewing experience could be better. This is a screenshot from last night's Thursday night NFL football game on Twitch. What you'll see here is there was a Halo, there's a Halo advertisement, and I'll get to that in a second. But what's different from more of the linear programming is, notice here on the left of the screen, you now have something called streamer standings. You have an overlay of interactivity. So as you're watching a football game, instead of it just being static, you could say, for example, will the quarterback throw for more than 50 yards on this drive? And there's live polling. And if you think about that from an esports perspective, you're going to be able to have a very interesting way of engaging with your consumers. You'll have a very interesting way. Let me kind of jump back here. Sorry, things slipped there. You'll find a much better way of getting people further engaged, much stickier experience. This was the example I left you on. But again, what you're seeing here on the left, this panel here is an interactive extension, which drives all this interactivity and more value to the consumer. I want to share with you one quick video here. This is, and those of you that are interested in getting into the esports or gaming industry, this is Twitch, but notice this is a product that we built and launched recently in support of the Halo game. It's a mini game that people that are streaming Halo, you could play a mini game on top of the overlay driven by the streamer, but again, driving more engagement, providing a new, unique way to keep fans interactive. So keep thinking about these new channels, all these opportunities, and how you could provide more value for all these new innovations that we're seeing in the space. Let me see if I could skip off it. And lastly, classrooms. I saw this recently last month. Generation Esports, they're creating 25 gaming labs in high schools nationwide. They're building, in partnership with the Army National Guard, they're building custom gaming labs where students are promoting esports and being able to engage and play together. And hopefully we'll start seeing this on a more global basis. But this article is available. You guys should check it out and see how you could reference this for other types of programs you might want to implement across, whether it's middle schools or high schools. But let's jump right into esports organizations. Let's talk about what are some of the trends, talk about what are some of the business aspects, what are we seeing at the ground level from esports teams, some of the challenges they're overcoming, but also the big opportunities that are ahead of them. The guest speaker that I'm going to bring to the table today is from Team Envy, who is one of the leading worldwide esports teams. As I mentioned before, this person was a professional esports player. His game was Call of Duty, and it's only appropriate that this video I'm going to share with you is from them winning the Call of Duty World Championships earlier this year. So let me go ahead and play this video for you. It's just under a minute, but at the very end, you'll start to see the team that won this.
I believe in you guys more than any team I've ever believed in before. Let's fucking get these
possible. This is happening again. 2 versus 4 it was for Empire. Now into 2 versus 2.
It's happening again.
Are you kidding me? Both players take damage. The challenge comes in from Shotzi. The flood has gotten here from Empire. The spawns haven't flipped, but they've got enough kills to get phase spawning in the back and get into the point. This is great from Empire.
Yeah, and now they're going to trap them too.
Five retakes for phase. First blood to Illy.
Let's go, baby! Hey, let's go! My boys, let's go! Let's go! I love you guys, dude. Oh my God, dude. You guys are the best in the world.
So lots of excitement there from Team Envy. Their team is called the Dallas Empire, and that was footage from winning the Call of Duty World Championships very recently. So with that said, it is my pleasure now to introduce you to Mike Rufiel, also known as Hastro, a fan of the Houston Astros from years back, but a former professional Call of Duty player, owner, founder of Team Envy. He has multiple teams underneath the Envy brand, including the Dallas Fuel, which is an Overwatch team, the Dallas Empire, which plays Call of Duty, and there's other games, Counter-Strike, Halo, Valorant, Smash Brothers, and Rocket League. He's based out of Dallas, Texas, and excited to have you here, Mike.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I know that we don't have a ton of time, but we want to talk a little bit about just management, ownership. Maybe if we could talk a little bit about your personal journey of how you got into esports and how you became how you founded Envy and have built it to what it is today. So if you could spend a minute or two on that.
Sure. Like many people, I think gaming it started as a hobby for me. I just really enjoyed playing the games that I grew up with, and eventually I stumbled upon a Call of Duty game that I really enjoyed, and I played a lot of the game. And I will say that the in-game technology advancements in ranking algorithms really changed my life, because what ended up happening was I realized through the in-game's ranking system that I was one of the best players in the world. And so I decided to take it to the next level and begin to participate in tournaments. So like, larger, bigger scaled tournaments that were more organized. And so as soon as I started competing, I started winning those tournaments, and there was a little prize money involved and so on. So I was able to, focus full time. And this is 15 years ago when I first got started. And so I continued to play, and a lot of people, it turned out, wanted to see the best players in the world play as more organized competition started to happen. And we grew enough in terms of a brand and attracted enough audience that sponsors started to knock on our door and wanted to advertise with our team. And so from that point forward, we started to create a business. If somebody is willing to spend money and create revenue for you for a service, then you have a real business that you can start. And so we formed a business and we started to expand using the capital that we received from sponsorships into other games. And at the time, we never spent the money or on things that we couldn't grow the team with. Every dollar we spent was to expand the team. I didn't even pay myself for the first 8 years. So I was constantly trying to build a business from this. And I think that's why we've turned out to be one of the premier organizations in the world that survive today.
Wow. So Mike, how different is it today versus when you got started? Because I've noticed in the last 3 years, 4 years, there's been a massive surge in esports investments from professional organizations to venture capitalists, but not a couple $1 million investments. We're talking 20, 30, $40 million per team. So can you talk a little bit about what's really the driver behind this growth and the excitement?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's all driven by audience, right? I think without an audience, you really don't have much there to invest around. And because we're garnering such a large audience so quickly in esports, the scale has begun to move faster, and we're starting to scale faster as more capital gets infused into the ecosystem. And so the industry is really seeing a lot of growth right now because I would say within the last 5 years, we've seen an enormous amount of capital get invested into esports. And I think a lot of people were nervous about when that happened. But to be quite honest, we're seeing now kind of the fruits of that. Typically takes a couple of years to see that capital really become to take an effect on the industry. And so, we're now seeing continued audience growth. We're now seeing technology and software being applied to the industry to help grow and foster the audience and the fan experience. We're starting to see more connectivity with a mainstream audience through various media outlets, linear television, and so on. So there are certainly lots of tailwinds happening in esports, and a lot of it is due to the capital being invested behind it.
Got it. So another related question: with all this competition, and you guys being one of the top teams in the world, what do you think about the future? When we think about trends, what do you think about Envy and how you're going to differentiate and how you guys will be one of the successful franchises long term? What are you guys thinking about now? What are things that you're doing to put you ahead?
Yeah, I mentioned years, taking years to see the effects. We started really deploying, I would say, large amounts of capital back in 2016. And so I would say just in 2021, it took us probably 5 years. Our organization specifically will be really blazing the trail in esports in a lot of ways. One of the things that we're starting to see is kind of localization and regionalization of esports teams specifically, so that we are essentially taking some of the traditional sports entertainment model where you have professional sports teams and they're local and regionalized. We're taking a bit of that element and applying that to esports. So I can tell you at Envy, one of the ways we're doing this is by creating public-private opportunity with municipalities to build an arena and to build a large venue. But it's not just a venue; it's also a full-on real estate development built around an esports arena where our teams will play, where esports competition can happen, where amateur, semi-professional level, youth, scholastic esports can all congregate. So we're very close to announcing our plans for that. It's been a 2-year process. And I think what you'll see from our organization in terms of real estate, you'll see many other esports organizations strive to do as well. And, that's just one of the many trends that you'll see coming about. There's going to be a lot of regionalization and localization of esports. Maybe it will take a little bit longer for there to be widespread teams, but we're certainly doing that with Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League, which are two very ambitious, the most ambitious leagues in all of esports. And we're excited to be a part of that.
So this, again, when you think about an organization, when you think about a team, a lot of times, any business, you need to have a great market, you need to have a great product, you need to have a great team. What's your philosophy on teams? Like, how do you find great players to play, the professional players? And then on top of that, how do you find great people to help you manage the business?
Yeah, sure. So I'll answer the second one first, the second part of that question, which is, kind of great people in your infrastructure, right? Our organization specifically is probably investing at the very high end of infrastructure, meaning we're investing into our management team, we're investing into our staff, we're investing into facilities and venues, like I mentioned. So we're building a lot of infrastructure for North Texas and Texas, the state of Texas here in the U.S. We're building a lot of that infrastructure now, and have been for the last couple of years. And you'll probably see a lot of teams who took the full-on approach on content and merchandising and sponsorships. We're certainly participating in all of those things, but every team is different in the way that they're approaching their business. And I can just tell you, for us, we're really excited about some of these things that we've been working on for a couple of years that are truly groundbreaking and trailblazing. Now, in terms of players, we're out to find the absolute best players in the world. So it's like finding a needle in a haystack. It really is, because hundreds of millions of people play games. As you mentioned, there are over 2 billion people who play games digitally in some form or another. And we have to go out and find the very best players out there. So it's a very daunting task. We do a lot of scouting. Our team operations department is always watching even the most amateur competitions on the streaming platforms from all over the world at all hours of the day, so we can find the very best talent out there around the world. And one of the great things that we also have access to in the gaming industry is real-time analytics in most of the games, statistics from players inside the games themselves. So we can actually track every action that a player makes in the games that he's playing from home or she's playing from home, and we can get a lot of data to look at. And so we do a lot of that. We watch a lot of competition. We search through a lot of data. We also try to understand the mentality and psychology of each player and how they'll fit into our team and create a team dynamic.
Got it. I know that we want to leave some time for questions, but let me ask one more really quick, more around the product side. I mean, as you mentioned before, you have to create a large audience, and then you cater to that audience, not just from playing games and having them watch, but just generating content. Like, are you a content company? And if so, what are the requirements for professional organizations like yours to constantly be addressing that issue of content creation?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's an interesting one with our organization, because we always took the approach of, let's win as much as possible and let's gain a fan base that way, and let's just be the best team in the world, which we successfully have done. But I think there is this other side that is content that is very important to our growth as a business and the growth of esports in general. And we have just recently created a full-on larger division for content within our company, a much larger division, and are now applying the brunt of our force there to grow our reach through content. And so while you have to kind of pick and choose your battles when you're investing capital and deploying it at this level. And I think we took an approach where we built infrastructure first, and now I think our next phase in growing Envy is certainly to create a lot of content, work with a lot of content creators, and we feel like it's almost plug and play at any moment when you want to do that and invest capital behind it. So it's one of the most important things we can be doing as an esports team and a company, is entertaining an audience and making sure that we're creating enough compelling content for them to want to continue to follow our team.
Great. Etta, I think maybe I want to be sensitive to timing here. I know that the schedule said 6:15, and that's in 8 minutes. If there's any questions that you want to ask myself, and Mike's here as well, I'm sure he'll stick around to ask any questions regarding the team size. The team side, let's be happy to entertain those now if that works.
Sure, Anthony. Thank you so much. I think it's a very insightful sharing. Yeah, I do receive a lot of questions, so why don't I start my question first? It seems that you are quite optimistic about the esports industry and development, even during the pandemic. But I'm just wondering, because esports usually was taking place in huge venues for the excitement during the tournament. But with the past 12 years, we all, of course, stay at home. And I think predictably, in the next maybe more years, we're going to stay from home. How do you really see that will impact the format of esports? Do you think that people will then get used to just watch the game live from home instead of we come back to the big venue for the esports?
Yeah, well, I'm sure Michael will give you some specifics about their experience. Actually, Envy hosted one of the first Overwatch League away games last year, which is where the industry was headed, where teams would actually host esports tournaments and matches in their hometowns. But it really does feel like if you look at the overall macro numbers, a lot of the growth is in the online viewership. If you're looking at platforms like Twitch and YouTube and even chatter on Twitter, it really feels like, yes, it's great to have a live experience and sell tickets, but when you have a League of Legends event with 100 million people, maybe 0.1% is there live, or it's not or is physically at the venue. But again, we think over time, as COVID starts to evolve, that we'll get to a place where people will be comfortable to come back to an arena. But Mike, you want to talk a little bit about your thoughts on live attendance and how do you continue to grow the business?
Yeah, we're actually very fortunate for this pandemic to happen at a time where we've built out relatively good internet infrastructure around the globe, and it's getting, internet speeds are getting faster, and so therefore our games are able to be competed upon on the internet. And I would say it's not ideal for us because we want the highest level of competition live, but we are able to continue to compete and produce broadcasts and serve our sponsors and do a lot of the things that traditional mainstream sports could not do with all their players being at home. So we have a really big advantage there, to be honest. And as Anthony said, the audience is still there, and in many ways are continuing to do what they've always done, because the majority of that audience, like Anthony mentioned, is actually the digital online broadcast audience. And we're connected to way more people through the broadcast than we are in the live venue. So we're very optimistic about our ability to get through COVID, no matter how long it takes. To be quite honest, we were just beginning to produce live event experiences. We had only gotten through 2. We were one of the first organizations in the world. We were the first organization in the world to host a live home game, an official home game in a league versus another team. It's actually in the picture that you had up of me. We had 5,000 fans per day come in, sold out crowd here in Dallas to watch our first esports event. So we can survive without those events, because I'll tell you, in the early days, we don't make a tremendous amount of money off the live events just yet. We are essentially breaking even on those events, and in the future we will certainly have profitable events. But in the early years, we were having to do things like lease an arena, that we didn't own. So we had a lot of outside costs that we would consolidate within our company as we continue to invest into things that we would own and operate. So I think for esports organizations, we are certainly able to get through the COVID pandemic relatively unscathed.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm sure that we all want to pass through the pandemic as soon as possible. I got quite a lot of questions regarding the negative stigma of esports, particularly Chinese parents. If we play video games, it regarded to something not really positive. And people, particular parents will say that, why don't you spend more time on your homework? Of course, that things seems to be changing, but the stigma is still quite strong. So this question I want to ask Anthony and Mike, do you also have this kind of resistance when you indulge yourself into the esports industry? The other question is from your experience in teaching and collaborating with education. How to start with that? How you actually convince academic institutions to collaborate with esports, and what kind of positive impact for that kind of collaboration?
By the way, let me address the one question. Mike has a young child. I have a 12-year-old and a 20-year-old, but my 12-year-old is an active gamer. Plays regularly every day and has aspirations of being a professional player, right? So this kid is on that track. But it got to the point last year where we weren't monitoring it too much, and he was playing anywhere from 6 to 10 hours a day, probably, if I had to judge my analytics right. I mean, it got to a point where, yeah, it did become an issue. And what we had to do is, and I'm also monitoring what type of games he's playing, but we did come in and had to implement a pretty strict policy around, for me, it was like every hour in the game, you spend an equal amount of hour either outside or doing something else that was unrelated to it. So, for me, I figured out something that works really well with my child, but it's not just him. I would say it's every one of his friends has this similar issue with their parents. So I don't think this is something just with China or with any other place in the world. I think a lot of kids all over the world, I think all parents are kind of facing this challenge. And at USC, we're doing a lot of interesting things where we have a lot of students we have this Minecraft project right now where there's a bunch of students that are recreating the entire university in Minecraft. And people love to play Minecraft, and now they're using these tools and they're using this modding to be able to offer the people that can't visit USC to provide them a new way of touring campus during this COVID time. So, we're constantly looking at how do we build games, not just for the sake of pure entertainment, but also to where it could be for rehabilitation, serious games for causes, whatever it is. A big part of our program at USC is trying to find those different types of use cases. And I know Mike is obviously thinking of other ways within his own community where they could have a more positive impact with games.
Yeah, and I think balance is everything. If you're a concerned parent, there are two things. One, balance is important. And so, like Anthony said, creating a policy with your son or daughter is very important to establish ground rules to the amount of game time they can have to create a balance. And number two, I think there are lots of negative stigmas around gaming and esports from parents still. But I think it's just about educating about the positives of gaming as well. There are so many positive outcomes for your child playing a lot of video games. There's from increase in cognitive ability to reflexes to social awareness, because you're constantly typically playing with other people when you're playing multiplayer games. And there's also this there's got to be some value to the fact that your child loves what they're doing, so they're happy. And so you also can't discount the happiness that video games bring your child. So all of those things combined, I think, maybe there's a bit of too much worry from parents, but there's also this inherent need to police your children's game time and what their aspirations are with their games.
Yeah, one of the big issues that we're seeing on a global basis is this issue of loneliness. This is a massive issue across, all over the world, right? And what we are seeing is within games like Fortnite, I saw some studies done there where it's not just about playing the games with the friends, but a lot of the kids during this isolated period, they have a sense of community there. It's actually a place to go, like an arcade or somewhere like a playground after school. For a lot of the kids, this is just, it's not just playing a game, but it's also a social experience for them to express themselves in different ways, just digitally, since they're kind of in this COVID state. So I think there's a lot of positives too around that sense of social, but with kids, a lot of these privileges could easily get abused. And that's why we need to have like policies in place.
I'm sure that is really impressive, particularly you talk about even promoting esports in the high school and also all these successful examples at USC. Even during when they are studying, they already attract capital to invest in their games. So my next question is for the students who are interested in the esports. What are your recommendations, how they start with it? If they are not video gamers, you said that there may be other talents on communications, even on accounting, events management, that may possibly be participating in the e-sport. But it seems we don't really have a conventional way of developing or starting this career. Do you have any recommendations for our students?
Yeah, I'll give just a couple examples. I think it's even more optimistic of breaking in esports than it is in games, because you could take a lot of these academic disciplines around. It could be accounting, it could be real estate. Mike just talked about one of the big trends is there's going to be a push into owning real estate and building stadiums and having that expertise available as well. I would say on our School of Communications, the Annenberg School of Communications, you need brand managers that understand how to give out a message. You need brand managers that understand PR, crisis management. There's so many of these skill sets out there that esports organizations need in order to thrive. Think about all this fundraising and having analysts being able to look at the markets, to look at competitive analysis, doing these business model canvases and all these instruments that we use to value companies and markets. So I really think that there's so many different ways of contributing into esports. And I think Mike could probably talk about from his own experience, if he could get 3 interns right now, if he could have 3 interns, could you maybe tell us what you would want them to do based upon needs that you have in your organization?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've now grown the company to a size where we have a very specific departments, and with a hierarchy and structure within those departments, like any mid to large size business would need. And so I would say, if I had to choose 3 interns, we're looking for 1 in team operations, we're looking for 1 in content, and we're looking for 1 in sales and marketing right now. Those would probably be my 3 specific areas where we want to grow young staff members into senior staff members in those 3 sectors right now. Those are our 3 most important areas.
Mike, what are you looking for from somebody in team operations? What's the role, what's the responsibility, and what's kind of the ideal background?
Sure. It's it would be player management, talent management, coordination. Think logistics of everything that we do as a team. Travel, booking the travel, booking time for content. It's completely managing all of the talent that you have and all the players that you have, but also all of the practice regiment and scheduling for that, and anything that we have to do to either compete or create content or deliver for our partners and sponsors. So we're all of that encompassed under a team operations department.
Got it.
Got it. Cool. I will send my email to you and then promote to all the students under APRU for these exciting opportunities. I think we are running out of time. Before we close, can Anthony and Mike give a very brief insight about how you see the esports industry in the next 5 years. What will be the boom?
Want me to take that one?
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned localization, regionalization is going to be more prominent as we continue to move along. A lot of esports organizations taking territory and establishing themselves as a regional hub for esports. I think you're also going to see technology and software come into play in a much larger way across the entire esports industry, whether it be through broadcast media, whether it be through analytics and data science for teams, whether it be for content creation. Technology and software is going to be a major player for us in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about more legitimacy around esports, as it compares against other forms of entertainment like traditional sports. I think right now for this industry to really grow and reach its height is if you think about media rights. Mike talked about that earlier. One of the main reasons why this large audience with this massive engagement doesn't generate the same revenues as traditional sports is I think there has to be more education to advertisers and networks, and people have to really see the value of what this audience is all about. And I'm thinking we're getting there. I think we made a big improvement over the last 3 or 4 years, but I think in the next 4 or 5 years, with an Olympics coming up, hopefully there's going to be an esports presence at the next Olympics, maybe not this year, but in 4 more years. And I just think we're slowly getting all these big advertisers really educated on what esports is, what this culture is all about. And hopefully we'll be at that point where we are as competitive in terms of the viewership and the channels and the different networks that we're broadcasting at.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm really thrilled speaking to you, Anthony and Mike in LA. On behalf of APRU and Cyberport, let's give a big applause to both of them of their insightful sharing. So to conclude, these two speakers from the esports industry are really optimistic about the esports trends. We don't see really a downturn during the pandemic, particularly with the emerging technologies of home mobile and all the devices. Not only esports can now take place in the big venue, but people can also watch the live stream, participate in the esports with all the devices. The speaker, Anthony, also talked about esports is not just about playing games. So it's good news to students, particularly for those who have a negative stigma. Esports industry is really all-rounded. They need talents on communication, team collaboration, marketing, events, all kinds of expertise. But I think the most important thing is that you have to be authentic and really passionate in the esports industry. To conclude, esports will be becoming uptrend, particularly the Olympic is coming up, and we look forward to more success of the esports industry. And for APRU and also the esports fellows program, hopefully will also help remove the negative stigma of the esports development. So I enjoy really speaking to the speakers today, and I hope you do the same. And thank you very much for watching this keynote session. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you very much, Professor Borkas, Mike, and Ms. Wong for the insightful discussion on trends in esports to watch for the future. We will now have our first panel discussion of the day, which will be discussing on the topic Global Exchange, Emerging Esports Ecosystems. This session will be moderated by Mr. Timothy Shin, the founder and CEO of Yes Esports Asia Holdings Limited. Yeah. Joining him on stage are Professor Pei Chi Chung, Associate Professor, Department of Cultural and Religious Studies from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Mr. Terry Tseng, CEO and founder of MadHead. And joining us virtually, we will have Mr. Sean Heng Xiao Jie, student, president of NUS eGaming, NUSEG, from National University of Singapore. Last but not least, Dr. Anand Bojan, School of Computing, National University of Singapore. Again, we will have our Q&A session, which you can simply scan the QR code and type in your questions during the discussion. Before we start, we would like to share a video from Esports sharing the incredible accomplishments in the last year. Please enjoy. For sharing with us some highlights of your accomplishments. Mr. Shen, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, honorable speakers. I'm Tim Shen. I'm the CEO of Ye, who is based in Hong Kong, but our group covers 40 plus countries in 5 continents. In this session, we will discuss questions on what role does Hong Kong esports play in the regional and international esports ecosystem? On top, what are the ways that government, higher education, and industry cultivate a thriving esports ecosystem? So without further ado, I would like to have our panel speakers each to present a 5 minutes presentation to our guests. So to start with, I would like to invite Professor Chong to start with her presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me here. I just would like to share that the presentation today is based upon a series of conversations with gamers around Asia in the past few years when I was doing my research. I'm going to talk about player-led esports ecosystem, and I'm from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Okay, so if you look at the slides here, you'll be able to see some detailed statistics about the global esports market. There's a total of 2.7 billion players, and then it's having a market revenue of 1.1 billion. And you can see the huge number of audience here, where more than 50% comes from Asia. And by comparison, if we look at the esports in Hong Kong, we actually have quite a few very interesting and notable teams so far. And the active number of players by the year 2018 is around 300,000 people. Most of them comes from the age of 18 to 21. Then we can pass to the right one to look at the number of professional players. There's actually a total of 337 professional players being listed in the earning website, esports earning website. Okay, so by that then we can look at a few works that Hong Kong has been doing in the past few years. We are not early starter like South Korean, but we have been making quite some effort in developing esports. So we have government putting into a huge number of money to develop venue, to allow policy fund for having Cyberport to develop all kind of a scheme to help the industry. We can also have, actually cannot see very clearly. So we can also have new business. We so far have around like 108 companies in Hong Kong that's in esports business, and then there are actually 8 stocks that's been listed in Hong Kong as esports stocks. So there's also exhibition, also event, and most interestingly, we are also seeing the increased number of tournament being hosted around the MTR malls in Hong Kong. So with that, then, there are actually quite a few of key issues we might be need or looking into so far. So for example, when we look at so many things have been done, we probably want to ask, what is Hong Kong's blueprint? There's actually a lot of question about are we having a comprehensive strategy? So this will be something that we have to look internally by thinking about the development of esports. There's also this issues about talent. How do we grow the talent? And also, what are the industries that we can refer to in order to build a very healthy ecosystem of esports? So we're looking into this aim of developing Hong Kong into Asia's hub in international esports thing. If we are aiming for this direction, then what is our regional strategy and what is our global strategy? So issues with linking into the ecosystem in China may be something we can look at. And also issues about linking with the international esports thing through certain organization and company will also be something we can look into. So here is the chart that I want to share with everybody that is based upon several 3 years of interview with gamers, professional gamers, and also amateur gamers in South Korea and China. And here I find that actually there's a very interesting dimension that has been overlooked in the esports ecosystem. That is the player-led kind of public ecosystem, where it is for us to look into the area that's beyond the business side and also the concern of corporation. So a lot of time we are focusing on professional gamer. We are looking at their competitive tournament, and we are also looking at the business around there. And here we're seeing the big market that has been grown so far globally. But then when I talk to amateur and semi-professional gamers in South Korea, I find that there's actually an interesting kind of emerging skill set that's emerging out from the esports competition. These players, when they decide that halfway they are not pursuing their professional career, they actually will be able to turn their resource and also turn their skill into many interesting new professions that are emerging in esports. So for example, fund manager in China, where how do people retired esports player manage fund to make profit for certain esports team and company. And for example, data analytics and also shoutcaster. So here on the right side, you'll see people when they are not successful in becoming professional player, they transform themselves into certain kind of professional with special skill. So with that, then I would like to conclude that actually, so far we have been looking at esports from the sport paradigm, but I want to echo, or I want to promote the idea that esports is actually beyond a simple form of sport. Especially right now, Olympic Games last year just decided that they're not going to include esports in the upcoming Olympic Games. So there's actually a lot of issues that need to be looked into. For example, internet addiction and also doping issues. So I would like to call for this idea of a player welfare innovation model to see how we are able to transform a reskilling and also upskilling type of policy making to help the player to be able to grow in the much more healthy esports industry when they pursue their professionalization career. Thank you.
Thank you very much for Professor Chong's very insightful presentation. I would like to say I totally agree with Professor Chong's proposition re players' welfare enhancement because at the end, esports is a people's game. So for our next presenter, I would like to welcome Mr. Sean Hang, student and president of NUS e-gaming of Singapore. So Sean, please proceed.
Hi, yeah, are my slides on?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so hi, I'm Sean. I am the final year student at NUS School of Business, specializing in management and organization. But to most of my peers, I'm known as Bob Chuckles, president of NUS e-gaming. So I've been president for over a year now, and today I'd like to share a bit about my club and esports in NUS. So NUS EG was founded 13 years ago, back in 2008, making us the oldest and most prestigious university esports club in Singapore. Today, we have over 560 members across our 5 gaming divisions: League of Legends, Mobile Legends, Overwatch, Super Smash Bros, and Valorant. Now, each division also caters to both esports players and recreational players, with the esports wing focusing more on competitive trainings and representing the university in competitions, while the recreational wing focuses more on community bonding and finding other like-minded players to game with. However, our meteoric rise hasn't always been smooth sailing. In 2019, we were a pale shadow of our former glory, and also coincidentally where yours truly came in. So back then, I was faced with the decision: do I let the club die out then and there, or do I persevere on and find new ways to revitalize the club? Needless to say, I chose the latter. It was tough then, planning everything effectively from scratch, but at the same time, exciting to start afresh. Rewriting our club's motto, mission, and vision to better reflect what I believe our club represents. Working to rebrand the club as a varsity sports group. And of course, clearing up the bureaucratic nightmare. These were just a handful of the challenges that I had to surmount in those early days. But I soldiered on because of my passion to build an esports community that my younger self could never enjoy. I started small, beginning first with building a core team around me. I reformed my management committee by selecting students like myself who were passionate about esports and wanted to build a holistic and welcoming e-gaming community. In February this year, the 7 of us launched the club's first offline Chinese New Year celebration. And though the reception was lukewarm, it was a start. We took on this momentum to begin other projects, working with the NUS Office of Student Affairs to hold a gaming marathon for students who were quarantined at the outbreak of COVID. As we continued our relentless drive to increase the visibility of our club and promote the idea that esports is a much needed boon for mental wellness, we noticed a particular trend. And that trend being that as our events were attracting more and more attendees, our club size started to increase more and more. And this also gave me a greater pool of students to recruit from. So if you take a look at this graph, we started in February with our event at 42 attendees at our event, and 42 members in my club and only 38 attendees for our event. By the time we hit August, just before school reopened, we had 369 members in our club officially registered and 164 members attending our celebratory events. Yeah. So moving on, our ability to carry out these events and projects is not only due to the countless hours and sacrifices made by my management committee, but also due to the support we receive from external parties. The club's move to the sports office as part of the Team NUS brand institutionalized us as a varsity sports group, granting us a deeper connection to the university's administration and opening up more resources for us to better train our athletes and plan activities. Outside of the school, we've worked with industry partners to build an esports ecosystem that spans the tertiary education system nationwide. Organizations such as SOGA, SGA, and PvP Esports have been key partners in enabling us to hold esports tournaments through equipment rentals and prize sponsorships, as well as exposing students to professional development within the esports industry through workshops, courses, and internships. All our efforts have culminated in the successes that the club enjoys today. As a whole, our club has expanded over 1,400%, 14 times greater in size from when I took over. We stand out today as a connected esports community, able to find friends to play together, regardless of game genre, and talk about memes, trends, and all things e-gaming. We are one of the largest clubs in NUS and one of the largest esports clubs in Singapore. Recreationally, we are able to host weekly online sessions and bi-monthly events that attract great numbers, something that was unimaginable before. Competitively, our teams have benefited from our esports training. Based on an esports doctrine we wrote from scratch ourselves. In the 2020 InterVarsity Games Festival, NUS EG swept first place in 3 out of the 4 events, coming in a close second for the final event. Looking towards the future, we intend to keep forging onwards to make esports a viable career path for youth in Singapore, while making e-gaming an enjoyable communal experience within NUS. We'll be working more in hand with our student coaches to push the capabilities of our esports teams and coming up with new innovative ways to engage e-gaming enthusiasts, be it through our streaming platforms or on social media. My hope is that more companies, not just within the esports industry, will be willing to support us in our drive. As students, we are always short of funds and sponsorships to really push the boundaries of what we aim to do. In terms of small-scale events like doing parties to large-scale tournaments involving universities or teams from other countries. For APRU and its member universities, I would recommend working with companies from the esports industries to extend learning opportunities to students hoping to get into the industry, be it through games development, productions, or even event organization to help foster a more enriching ecosystem. For myself, well, I'm graduating next December and considering a career in esports in which I'm a certified coach for. So if there's any company looking for passionate gamers, I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. Again, for our group, in order to show our support to talents like yourself, not only we are more than happy to try to connect you to more job opportunities, but we are now offering actually scholarships for those students who want to learn and pursue a future career in esports also. So now we come to the third presentation. I would like to introduce Dr. Anand Bojang, Senior Lecturer, School of Computing, also from National University of Singapore. Professor, please proceed.
Sorry. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here in this exciting panel. So are my slides visible? My slides are up on the screen. Okay, so today I'm going to just talk about cloud gaming and some advancements in the technologies. As mentioned earlier, like the cloud and the streaming in the cloud and cloud game are kind of going to have been an integral part of growth of this entire industry, especially streaming and viewership. And again, in future, what we could expect from this entire technology stream. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So let's just move on. Okay, so there are 3 areas. So one is cloud games. So it has been seen as a very good business opportunity even for carriers with the introduction of 5G. And okay, so we'll see where this is, and then we will see what's happening in Singapore. We are kind of also looking into kind of a hybrid sports using AR technologies, and I'll talk a little bit on the industry academia relationship. Okay, so a quick overview on the cloud gaming. The type of cloud gaming we are actually talking about, the entire game is run in the cloud and a video stream. Well, the entire rendering happens here, and the video stream sent to the player, and the player can be using a very thin client, maybe just a VR or AR glass. You can play the game with some kind of joystick or kind of input device. So this is a very well-known thing, and of course there are many other ways cloud can help to launch and host the games. But this is an extreme case where cloud does everything and only the video is streamed to the client, and the client is basically the player is playing on the video. So there are various advantages. Probably we all know that: quality, maintenance, security, in all these aspects. And of course there are lots of challenges. Basically the latency. The latency is already very high, the internet latency, but then we do everything in the cloud and stream. The the latency is going to further increase. And again, the bandwidth. Okay, so now we are doing video streaming, then sending some game update packet. So that will be again another concern for cloud gaming. But there's just a quick overview. And as you can see, the 5G technology is kind of promising. It has brought down the latency very, very significantly to lower levels. And I can see that from the connection to the edge is like the latency is just 1 millisecond and lower. And connecting to the cloud at the ISP or the service provider itself, or telco service provider itself, is like about 20 to 50 milliseconds. But again, if it goes to public cloud, it is kind of slightly higher. It goes up to 50 to 100 milliseconds. So 5G we all talk about it's a promising technology, and is has already penetrated in many parts of the world. But there is also another thought going on. Okay, so every time when a new G comes, we always think that, no, okay, this is going to improve the speed and the gameplay is going to be very smooth, and things like the cloud gaming is going to emerge, and all those things were continuously being promoted. But even this with 5G or upcoming next Gs, is this problem will be really being solved? As you can see, in all these technologies, what we are actually doing is the latency at the edge is actually reduced a lot, up to like 1 millisecond. So that is the last mile connectivity, and the delay is reduced a lot. But the core network is still having lots of delay, lots of issues, because there is lots of legacy systems in the core network. That what I'm talking about, the middle of the network. So this is the part really delaying the contribute to the delay in the entire transmission of data. So there are like even people like talk about things like, okay, the internet can never be used for live gaming, or cloud gaming can never happen, especially if you even move into the multiplayer aspect of that. It is kind of impossible. Kind of this kind of notions are going around in many places, or many people talk negative aspects about it. Okay, so it's very true that the pipes in the middle are just getting, we are focusing just making it, the increasing the bandwidth, making it fatter than improving the speed. So this is true, accepted, and of course we cannot really ensure that this will change in a near future, and because of lots of legacy system is very, very complex thing in the core internet is very hard to change. So what we can do as a game developers, can we work around this? Can we make things better, even with whatever we have currently in the whatever the net provides currently? So that's where we thought about some new ideas in our lab. So this is a simple taxonomy of computer games. So you can think computer games as either independent world or shared world. So basically, like a local single player game, the player is playing in an independent world with an individual copy. And if you think about the shared world, basically what we mean is a network multiplayer game. So we have every player has the individual copies playing on the individual copy, but in the world is shared among the rest of the players. And we also have local multiplayer. Okay, so it's a kind of a shared screen, and people play locally a multiplayer game. Okay, so it's a shared world and shared copy. But what is missing is this part. Okay, so there is nothing happening in this area. We saw that there's a blank, and this is what we can leverage on to rebuild or rethink how the game software itself is built to make it suitable for the current internet and 5G technology. Okay, so independent world and a shared copy. So what does it mean? Can we have a one single copy of game running, but each player play in their independent world as if they are playing their own independent game? Okay, so that's the idea. So current cloud game services, if you take a look in this slide, is basically like that. You have a game server, and whenever a new player joins in, a new instance is created, and a complete game is hosted. And from there, no, it is streamed to the player. This is the current structure. So what we are looking into, like, can we do this? Okay, so can we have a shared copy of the game and yet let the player to play in their independent world? If this is possible, of course, we have proven that it can be done very easily, and we have done that again because it's again built based on local multiplayer idea, and we can just easily turn it around to make it no an independent world shared copy feasible. And what we call this as a cloudy game. So because it's very cloud friendly kind of architecture. And if we do this, of course, we can have a better resource management, more fine-grained resource allocation, so that no, the cloud system itself, or the VM here, whatever, we can operate with less virtual machines and or lower scale infrastructure. Okay, so given that, how we can fit it into the what internet is providing today, and of course the 5G edge computing, which is no, getting some lots of mentions in the industry. So the edge computing basically, which means like no, the telco edges are going to provide some kind of computational power. So with our technology, where we can re-architect the software such that a single game can be shared by multiple users. So if we think about, if we take that into here and fit into this ecosystem, we come up with this kind of architecture. What we call it as a gamelet architecture, where the gamelet is basically something which is running in the 5G edge computing. It loads games on demand. So initially they won't have any games in here. When a player wants to play a particular game, it is going to just download the game on demand. Of course, the downloading a full game is like so several GBs. It will take time. So we start with a minimal content, and it will have a continuous streaming of the assets and other contents and other player information, just in case like there is a leaderboard and there are many other players playing connected to different gamelets. So that information again are maintained at the cloud system level. So the cloud again controls the login, joining game, and all the stuff. But the actual game itself played locally, which is very close to the player, which has like as shown in the 5G edges, they have just 1 millisecond of latency. So the player can really enjoy a very high quality game when he is in this kind of architecture. And we tremendously reduce the bandwidth requirement at this area from cloud to the edge. So this is kind of a new architecture we are looking into, and there are 2 publications. Those who really want to know more details on this, please refer to this. And we have implemented the whole thing in Unreal Engine. So Unreal Engine is now open source since last 2 years. So everything you can all the code and everything is shared on internet. Those who are interested, please go and take a look into this. This probably we are seeing it as a feature for redesigning the game software architecture itself to shoot it into the 5G and the internet. Okay, so not only that, since like each edge may have some copies of the game over time, they can be even used to stream the gameplay. Okay, so it's not just they provide the or they act as a host for playing the game. They can also like stream the games played by other people in other gamelets. So that is kind of another area we are looking into. So if you are assuming this kind of streaming, there is a local game here in the gamelet that is the closest node. And this game is just going to get the game details from the backend, from the cloud, and it renders everything locally here and sends the stream to the client for viewing purposes for spectators in the case. And the spectators in this case can be even having very, very lightweight devices like AR, VR glasses, and moving around, they can still watch the game. So that's basically what's happening in our lab. That's one of our research work going on. Now I'm going to talk a bit more about the game development itself within the NUS. Okay, so I'm from NUS School of Computing. So we had game development module like courses like more than 15 years, but few years back we have revamped the entire curriculum. And in the past, it is like developing part and pieces of the algorithms for the game engine. From there, we converted it totally into giving students a complete game development experience. And this is because at the time when I took over this, there was a very good tool chain And the game engines, as specified earlier, the game engines has matured, and they provided lots of flexibilities and features for the developers to quickly develop, prototype, and develop the games. So what happened is we had like two courses. One is game development in School of Computing, and the game design in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. And together with other departments, okay, this is something like the students take in year 3. So they'll learn about the game design and game development. When they go to year 4, they completely involved in game development project. And again, that is a very, very multidisciplinary. So NUS as a school, we encourage multidisciplinary collaborative work among different departments. So even School of Business students are part of this game development project. They help into promote the game, marketing the game, and things like that. So that's a major change. And yeah, and not only that, we, to make it more interesting, we organize like a game showcase event. It's in a kind of esports kind of setting where each team will put up their game, and they invite players to play from the university itself, and again, I mean, from the university and the other institutions regionally, locally. So what we see here is a very vibrant live competition among players going on, and no, of course there are some small prize monies and things like that. But these gamers who play these games, they are the one decide the grade. And our students, they know that when they join this course, they upfront, they know that this is how the module is graded. You have to really make it very interesting for the gamers to play the game and compete with each other. So there are more games over the years developed.
So, Professor, can you wrap up
Sure.
Yes.
You can take a look into the website here for more details. Okay, so we had a chance to have, collaboration with other universities led by Layout VR. And this is the time we were introduced to VR games, and we started developing VR curriculum with the rest of the universities. Again, it is supported by Epic Games and Layout VR, and we move into VR games a lot. And in Singapore, you can see that this is something happening, what I call as a hybrid sports. Okay, basically, you also add physical health into the already promised cognitive and social health by the gameplays. Okay, so yeah, of course, this is a move and play. It's a very interesting thing. The hardware is doing very good job. Yeah, so this Singapore-based company, you can take a look into their website. Yeah. Looking forward, of course, we have VR coming up, probably provide more personalized experiences. And we can also look further away. Instead of this big screen here, the players can be projected on the ground itself. You can watch the play or using your VR or AR glasses.
Great.
Yes.
So
Okay.
thank you very much for another presentation.
Yes.
So I think with 5G now under launching in most Asian countries, millions of gamers are eagerly awaiting this crowdfunding to take cloud gaming to take place. So now we come to the last presenter, Mr. Terry Zhang. Actually, he is the CEO of and the founder of one of the most being played game in China and in Asia, MedHead. So without further ado, I would like to have Terry to start his presentation. Thank you very much.
Hello. So my name is Terry. I'm the founder and CEO of MedHead. So my company started in 2008, and we started to do games in 2011. So I would like to talk about more on how to put esports element in our game, and also the difficulty in developing the esports element in our game. So we started our first game, mobile game in 2011, and then after that, in 2013, we launched Tower of Saviors, 神魔之塔. So this game is getting quite popular in Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Singapore, and Malaysia. And at the beginning, we don't have any esports element in the game, but because we understand the user, they need to compete with each other. So we put some more esports element starting from that moment. So, And starting from 2013, every year we have contests in different country and city. So even until today, but right now because of COVID-19, so everything changed to online. But in the past, we did offline. So the benefit of doing esports element in our game is we create a lot of different influencers, because the pro player, the top players can become one of the internet icon, and a lot of users will follow them, so that our user can keep engaged in our game, and then more users will play our games. So esports itself, to be honest, is like a marketing expense. So it's not easy to generate revenue, but instead it make the game more interesting, more meaningful, and more people are willing to stay in the game, and eventually they are willing to spend more in the game. But the difficulty is that if we only focus on esports, it's really hard to make money. And also there's so much to do in hosting a contest, being as a developer. Because as a developer, you need to do everything. You need to create a APK, you need to do the server side, you need to host the contest. So is in high cost. But the most important thing is not easy. I think it's not really easy to make the game fair, because in our mind, if you host a contest, hold an e-sport, you need to make sure that the game is fair. So we need a lot of costs, expenses to make something like that. Especially in the past, we did it offline, it's more easy to handle. But right now we do it online. Because in online, there are so many people who can really join the contest. So it makes it more difficult to make sure it's fair. So we did it this year in online, and then to be honest, we failed a few times, and then we changed, and then we keep improving. So what I want to say to the audience is, esports is interesting, wonderful, but is also challenging. So I want to give you my feeling about esports, or even the COVID-19. It's similar because it's difficult. So, but I would like to say, when it's difficult, it comes with a high risk. But when high risk came, it will come with high return potentially. So if you really think it will be the trend, it will be your future, just work hard, just like you're working hard in 2020 in COVID-19 time. I'm sure the reward might be, or will possibly be much bigger than different time spent. And also, when you are working on the e-sport, even though it's not easy to see the return in this moment, but the return could be huge, potentially in the future. So that's what I want to share to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zhang. Now we come to a Q&A question with our panel speakers. And I would like to ask some questions for our panelists. First, two questions, maybe for Professor Chong. First is, how do you see Hong Kong influencing the region in esports and the cultural development of the community around esports?
Thank you for the question. I think we have big potential, because if we look at other supporting industry, we're already quite strong. We're already quite ready. But we're not like South Korea or China that have already been having esports for so many years. So I think there's actually kind of continuity. For example, the internationalization aspect, by setting up standard, connecting China to the global ecosystem, bridging Chinese and English environment, then that would be really good for Hong Kong. There's also this dimension of promoting a kind of e-sport into the global Olympic game scene. We have this Asia Electronic Esport Federation that is the only authority, highest authority by connecting all of the nations around the world. So we have Asian Game now in the year 2022 to already start to include esport in part of the competition. But then we can also, by using this organization, then we can push more forward to connect to the global esport culture. So there's also another expectation that I think Hong Kong can have very good, take very good role, which is to cultivate and grow the amateur and also semi-professional industry. How do we actually provide certain kind of model, innovation model to push forward for upskilling and also reskilling in the current industry now? Thank you.
Thank you. So one more related question to Professor Chong. So at the end, how do you see Hong Kong differentiate herself from other esports hubs, especially in the Asia region?
Okay, so I can talk about comparison to South Korea and China. If you look at South Korea and China, it's very huge fan base. There's a lot of very competitive players. But Hong Kong, we're still in the growing side. So probably we can look into this industry dimension to create entrepreneur and also creative business and link with other industries like, market with South Korea and China and also Taiwan and even for Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So then the next question will be for Sean. What trends do you see in professionalizing esports within universities? Because you are a student and also the president of the university club. And what are some of the challenges you will foresee?
Well, one of the interesting trends that I've noticed is that there is a more number of young, hungry players who want to prove themselves that they have what it takes to be the very best, be it at their game, be it at their level of play. And then there's also at a university level or at an organizational level, more recognition of esports as a legitimate sport, and more people are starting to buy into it. And then at the same time, one of the more interesting facets is that there's a rise in mobile gaming. More and more people are getting into mobile gaming and the different applications in there because it's very accessible, and then that's where esports also comes into play when it comes to mobile gaming. Like Mobile Legends and Wild Rift are such a big hit because they're so accessible and they're so relatable, and you can really play it on the go. Yeah. And as for the challenges, there are multiple challenges with professionalizing esports. One of them is still, unfortunately, the stigma still attached to gaming. I believe the previous speakers have mentioned it, that especially for Asian parents, there is this stigma that gaming is bad for grades. Then again, with current trends shifting forward, you can reassure your parents that there are scholarships for gaming, so it's not always a bad thing. And also, one of the downsides is that gaming is still viewed very much so as a male-centric activity. Even among my club, I only seeing about 20% or 25% ratio of females to males. So most of the gamers are still males, and among all my competitive teams, I have like one female player, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, out of like 30 something or 40 athletes for the school, we only have one female player, and that's something that should be addressed. Hopefully, we can push the idea that gaming isn't just for guys; it's actually girls can really take part and show that they are just as good or better than us. And also, one of the more meta or macro level challenges that we face is elevating the level of competition nationwide, because esports in Singapore, while we've been having at it for quite some time, it hasn't really hit the level where it's completely acceptable, even among all the universities, that this is the level of play we want. Some universities still aren't really fully buying into the concept of esports as a competitive event. And and that's why some schools, the teams that they send to take part in tournaments, the level of play that they come up with is a lot lower than, not to brag about my school, because we actually train for our tournaments. And so one of the challenges is to really raise up the entire level of play in the country so that there is a consistent level of competition to play against.
Thank you. I couldn't disagree. I couldn't agree with you more. For example, last year, during my meetings and interaction with more than 100 universities around the world, For those in Europe and some in Asia, like Australia, they already have some kind of scholarship programs. And most of them actually have a dedicated arena, large and small, for their students' enjoyment and training. So that's why I think it's more or less a deficiency in some of the major Asian countries like Hong Kong and Singapore, because universities are not that truly so-called supportive for this kind of initiative. Yeah, and that's why for our group we have launched our scholarships for those students who are planning to pursue a career, and also for this year we've kickstarted a global series of tournaments called Girls Power, due to the much underrepresentation of female gamers in the present ecosystem. Yeah. So the next question will be for Anand. There are two parts also. First is, what does the Singapore esports scene look like? How does it work with other hubs in the region, such as Hong Kong, in your opinion?
Okay, so yeah, that's a good question. Thanks for asking this. Again, as mentioned early by Sean, that Singapore, again, people see that have this negative stigma a lot. And even though esports is being promoted by the government bodies and private entities here and lots of organizations, but the growth is very, in a way, it's very slow. As you can see here, there are only few teams in Singapore as of now, and if you see the winners, the people who make money out of it is, you can see that there's one very top, very high level, and the next second high level is no, very, very low. So it's a very huge gap, and it's just seeing like one or two very successful thing really makes people to fear about what will happen into the future of their career. So because of this thing, and Singapore also, that we try to place ourselves as one of the best educational system in the world. So the focus is more towards the education than people like think that going through esports is kind of a waste of time and things like that. But given that recently there are, especially in the last 2 years, after SEA games has included esports, there are lots of again interests. I can see there is that slowly the mindset is changing, and new kind of organizations are set up to come up with local leagues and local policies, local rules at local level, regional level, and they again we like to position ourselves as a global leader in coming up with these policies for the entire world. Yeah,
actually, you're right. Early this year, my friend in Singapore, Nicholas, he sent me a photo, actually having the Prime Minister engaging in esports learning section. So I think this is a very good initiative by the Singapore government. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and there is a second part question. How does Singapore esports community differ from others in the region, which you have briefly mentioned? Is there anything you have heard through this and other discussions that you think can be learned from maybe this APRU section and this Cyberport event to enhance the further development of esports in Singapore?
Yeah, that's a very good related question. One thing I would say here is like the Singaporeans here, the players here, instead of just looking into Singapore players as an example, they need to really look into look out and look worldwide the players and what's happening in the entire ecosystem and things like that. So this knowledge and awareness basically is very important, I think, which we can actually bring in from a much earlier age. We try to know the educational system probably should support it to bring this knowledge and awareness from much earlier age, so that there will be a better positive aspect towards this entire thing. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I say Singapore can do to really grow in this area. Yeah.
Yes, actually, I'm very optimistic that Singapore, in no time, should have a very advanced progress in the development of esports, more or less, hopefully in Hong Kong also. Yeah.
Yes.
So now we come to the last questions for Terence. because he's a game developer, game publisher. But the first question is, how do you think we can nurture esports talents, say in Hong Kong?
I think it's all about market driven. So it's not easy for me. I think it's not easy to put much forces to any market. But one of my suggestions is maybe we can do something in the university side, because what I know this moment, most of university, they don't deliver practical experience to the university student. Just for example, when we hire programmers, we have the coding test. But for the coding test, it's very relevant because they need to pass the coding test so that they are really capable on doing their job in my company. But most of the university students fail because they didn't have those experiences when they are in the university, because they just don't have the experience. So I think there might be something we can do at the university to create their interest. They want to learn some more about the industry. They want to have more practical experience. So then eventually it will be market driven. If there's a very well-paid job, very good opportunity, the people will really go into it, and we don't need a big force to force people to go to those areas. Yeah. Thank you.
So there is a second part question. Because you are one of the most successful game publisher in China, Hong Kong, Asia, how do you see being a game publisher can participate and enhance the development of esports either in Hong Kong or in the region?
First thing I need to see, if esports is getting popular, we will be benefit from this trend for sure. So that's why we want esports to be popular in our region. Second thing is, at least we need to do good in our game, because we need to make sure our game is good in quality. And we also need to put some esport element in our game. And also we need to support, just like what other people do. When you see some good player, so can you able to search them and then give them resources and make sure they have the potential to be successful. So I think we try our best in different areas to make sure this is going to be good, and eventually we can benefit from this trend.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So because of the overrun in the panel, we are not going to go through the public question section. I would like to put a conclusion section, and my comments derived from the presentations and the questions just asked for our panel guests are as such. First, we have to do much more in terms of the gamers' welfare, enhancement, the recruitment of talents from either universities or from the community, the fostering of the esports career development, maybe as early as when the talents are still in their university years. And last but not least, because the whole Asia is entering a new technological 5G age, as Anat mentioned, we should fully take advantage of this technological development in order to ensure the next generation of esports games and also the gamers can fully enjoy and take advantage. And last but not least, I would like to thank all our panel guests from Hong Kong and from Singapore to participate in this very fruitful discussion. So thank you very much, and hope we can cooperate more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shen, for guiding us through such an interesting conversation on the way forward for Hong Kong as an emerging hub for esports. We hope to take these lessons with us as we make progress. Up next, we are also going to have our final, but also a very important panel discussion of the day on the topic of promoting equity in esports without creating barriers. We would like to invite Mr. Jim Huntley to moderate this session. Joining us virtually are Professor John Festinger, QC Adjunct Professor, Peter A. Allard School of Law, the University of British Columbia. Ms. Nessa Harrison, Student, VP External Relations of UBC Esports Association, the University of British Columbia. Ms. Kathy Ge, Student, Director of UCLA Esports, University of California, Los Angeles. Ms. Ariona Yao, Student, Vice President of the NTU Esports Society, Nanyang Technological University. Mr. Joe Jacko, Esports Coach, University of Southern California. Last but not least, Mr. Liam Slack, Esports Manager, Bandai Namco Entertainment America, Inc. We will have a Q&A session for the session. You may simply scan the QR code and type in your questions during the discussion. Mr. Huntley, please.
Welcome, everybody. Hello, APRU. I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. My name is Jim Huntley. I'm a professor in the University of Southern California's USC Games program, jointly shared between the School of Cinematic Arts and Viterbi School of Engineering. We've been #1 in game design for, I think, 11 of the last 12 years of the Princeton Review ranking. So I'm welcoming you here, and I'm even though it's late in the day here, I'm super excited to talk about this topic, promoting equity in esports without creating barriers. In the last 5 years or so, there have been massive political shifts in every single country that we live in, and how organizations large and small are prioritizing equity, diversion, and inclusion in their organization's ecosystem. Esports, as a new segment with a lot of opportunity for engagement and a lot of growth potential, has also inherited some, frankly, systemic gaming industry issues that existed in its DNA for a while now, which is the lack of representation from certain minority groups as well as from women in the workplace. That's especially a problem or an issue when it comes to esports in front of the camera. I think we've talked about that, and we touched on some of those points in the prior panel, where even in a totally different topic, diversity and inclusion and equity comes up as an issue that is a concern to us all. When these issues come up and there's a blow up in the culture and the community, and people start really, unfortunately, actually attacking some of the players or people that publicize themselves, the conversations flare up and then they die down. And there hasn't been a lot of long-term systemic change, aggressively speaking, in terms of fixing it. And so what we're going to talk about today, because we at USC Games actually think the lack of diversity and inclusion is probably the biggest long-term risk for esports as a segment and as a category. What we're going to talk about today are strategies and policies that esports experts in the ecosystem need to consider to create more inclusive and diverse cultures for gamers worldwide. And in terms of housekeeping, like the announcer said, we encourage participants to raise questions via the Q&A function during presentations. If you are using social media, I'm a marketing person, so I love giving this line. If you're using social media and want to share more information about this panel, please tag @APRU1997 and hashtag APRU on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So the first section of our panel, each speaker is going to have around 5 or 6 minutes to give initial remarks, as well as a couple of brief sentences about their bio. And then after all the presentations are done, I have a question for each of them, and then we'll do some audience Q&A. So with that, since all the introductions were done earlier, I'm going to turn it over to John Festinger, a professor at the Peter Allard School of Law at the University of British Columbia. John, take it away.
Thanks very much, Jim. I have just optimistically set my timer running. As a professor, you understand we never actually stay to the time we're allotted, but we pretend that we're trying to.
Exactly.
I've been a media and communications lawyer my entire career. which started in 1981. So yes, I'm old. I've essentially acted for Canadian broadcasters for the first 15, 20 years of my career. So those questions of equity and portrayal of gender, portrayal of race, actually go all the way back into broadcasting. So, point number one is these aren't new issues. I've been a UBC law professor and also have taught at other law schools since 1993. My courses have included intellectual property law, communications law, and video game law, which I taught my first course in that at Allard in 2005, rather. First course, I think, in the world on video game law. I've also taught corporate law, still teach corporate law a lot, and entertainment law. And the issues of equity and access and racism also show up in the corporate field. I've also, between 2005 and 2010, I was executive vice president of the Vancouver Canucks of the National Hockey League. And again, in professional sports, these same issues have been there. So when we talk about them in terms of video games and esports, I think there's sometimes a little bit of dumping on these particular areas without understanding that the antecedent areas, that the areas that came first, all of that, the one advantage of being old is I remember sexism in television and in film and in radio, and I was on the front lines of seeing complaints about racism and sexism. So, number one issue is not to panic. Number two, to me, is, and you sort of alluded to it, but Jim, governance is the key issue. Yeah. So how do we govern ourselves in an esports sense, and how do we take the opportunities that that university esports demand demand good governance, because it really does. If we're going to mess up our students, then we are way on the wrong track. And I think university esports can actually serve, if done properly, as a model for what all of esports needs to do, because esports is pretty fragmented right now. It's kind of a mess governance-wise, and doesn't really know, is it a sport? Is it a game? Is it academic? Is it fact? Is it fiction? So number one is governance, and I want to put governance in the realm of an opportunity where, if we work on equality and respect being built into the system, then we will get equity. And we have to remember that, one of the good things about esports is that men and women and have equal talent when it comes to esport from every indication, and race isn't an issue either. Also, university esports have a good opportunity that to distance itself from gambling. And sometimes I feel uncomfortable when I see how other esports get a little bit too close. So governance is number one. Yeah. But I also want to talk about what esports can do in terms of furthering the role of universities. So obviously what universities do is education, but let's not forget, my daughter just came back from her first semester at McGill University in Montreal. I'm in Vancouver. She just came back today. But why did she go so far away? Student socialization, relationships, and all of that. There is a digital future to education, even post-COVID. And you know, one thing that esports does, and in fact video games do very well, is create horizontal connections. And horizontal connections is actually what we're really missing, in my view, in this COVID education environment where many of us are teaching remotely. We're not able to get the connection between students. We're great on the vertical between professors and students. We need more abilities to get students to band together. And esports, in fact, does that. And that horizontal is critical to student health, to student mental health. And I'd suggest that equality and equity end up being a natural outgrowth of a healthy environment. 6 minutes and 9 seconds. Over to you.
No, very, very solid points. That's something that the faculty at USC and myself have talked about a lot. How do we make sure that we don't just have these screens for one-to-many conversations, but also have them connect the students with each other and build the type of culture, at least as close as we can get in this, with these challenges that they would have when they were actually on campus. So very good points. I'm going to turn away from John and introduce Nessa Harrison. Sorry, she's a student and head of VP External Relations for the UBC Esports Association at UBC.
Hello, as Jim said, my name is Nessa Harrison and I am the Vice President of External Relationships for the University of British Columbia Esports Association, located in Vancouver, Canada. I'm currently a fourth-year Asian Cultural Studies student here at UBC, same as John, and I'll be speaking about my experiences in esports from the student's perspective, as someone who's also on the executive board of our school's Esports Association. I'm very lucky to come from a club that has evolved to have a zero tolerance rule for discrimination, racism, and sexism. It's extremely welcoming. Our leadership is amazing, supportive, and always tries to promote equity in esports in any way possible, whether it be holding women's gaming nights or trying to bringing out girls in our community or having a diverse board. Because of that, I consider myself extremely sheltered because it wasn't until I decided to go out and pursue an esports career outside of the club that I realized how prevalent sexism and racism still are in the esports industry. And despite not having much female representation in esports jobs near me, I knew that it was something that I wanted to pursue, so I still am trying to do my best to do that. When I first went out into the big world of esports, one of my first jobs was actually to analyze social media comments and create an advertisement plan for an esports media company. As I presented the marketing plan to my manager, he blatantly told me that my opinions didn't matter because I was only part of the female 3% viewership as opposed to his 97% male viewership. He said, as part of the majority of our viewership, I think that our viewership would love an ad where you get into a cosplay of one of the game characters, and actually showed me an image of one of the characters, which was an underage Korean girl wearing a bodysuit, which isn't what I was hired for. And when I expressed this to the higher ups, they just wrote it off as a joke. They said, oh, he's just kidding, Nessa, like, why are you so upset about it? But they never brought it up again. That's just one example of like many times that I've experienced like this kind of just sexism in esports, and I think that it is something that women shouldn't have to deal with. Even recently, within my few months of being VP External, I learned to create a pitch deck for my club that I was really proud of. But even in the middle of our external partnership calls, the people that I talk to will say things like, hey, kind of random, but I saw your partnership deck and I saw the headshot that you have in it. I just have to know, where are you from? You just look so exotic. And I have to say like, oh, I'm from Canada. And it's like, no, like, what's your real background, your ethnicity? And it's like, oh, I'm half Canadian, half Filipino. And then he goes, oh, that's so cool. I have a friend from the Philippines. And you're probably wondering, why am I sharing this with you? Well, it's just that like, it's not something that my non-minority friends ever have to deal with. And I think that it completely derails any sort of partnership conversation. It's just such a distraction that like what I look like has just have such an impact on like any sort of conversation that I have in the esports industry. In both cases, my abilities and anything that I was pitching mattered less to the person that I was speaking to than something entirely out of my control, which is my appearance. Because of this, there have actually been many times that I've considered leaving esports. And I know that many other women and minorities actually have left as a result of the lack of inclusion for them. Just as John was saying, I think that like it shouldn't be a thing. I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah. It's only thanks to my friends in esports and the club that I'm in that I've been able to stay. And I think that with these examples, I'd like to speak about what we as students and club leadership can do to better promote equity in esports, what our administration can do to help us achieve that, and what the brands that we work with can do to promote a more inclusive image for their brand. For students, I have to say the obvious: don't be a bystander when your friends make the casual sexist or racist joke, because that could be the difference between a woman or minority entering the esports industry or leaving. For club leadership, I'm sure that you understand that inclusivity starts at home. For many students, your esports club will be their home on campus for the next 4 to 6 years of their lives. I definitely know that it was for me, and I definitely wouldn't have been able to continue pursuing my role in the club if I didn't know that there were people who respected me regardless of my gender or my ethnicity. As leaders in collegiate esports, it's definitely essential to promote inclusivity on campus, and I'm actually really proud of my club for doing so. For administration, I think that things as simple as spreading the word about your clubs on campus as being welcoming to all would help immensely. Hosting club days and career workshops are other examples I can think of. I know that UBC did that earlier this year, pre-COVID. That's crazy to think about. That was just earlier this year. They hosted a career workshop, and it really showed that there are women in esports and women in gaming, and there is representation of their respective identities in esports. I guess lastly, for the big brands, from my personal experiences that I mentioned earlier, I'd say that treating the minorities within your companies with respect, regardless of what they look like, would be amazing. And for everyone, just use the golden rule. Treat others the way that you want to be treated. I think that goes without saying, but I guess that it's easy to forget when you're always behind the screen in gaming. So I guess that's like my last point. Yeah, I guess I'll turn it back over to Jim.
Yeah, that was great. Thankfully, we have our mics muted because when Nessa was relaying some of her experiences, you would have heard me just go, oh, God. Because these things happen, and Lord knows we've had female players and female staff members also relay experiences like that at USC. But when you hear them, every single story is just a groan because it just shows how far we still have to go. But thank you so much for those insights. Nesta, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Guh, who's going to give a presentation. She's a student and the director of UCLA Esports at the University of California, Los Angeles, who, by the way, are our crosstown rivals, the USC Trojans. So, but do a great job.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you everyone, all the panelists, guests, and APRU. I'm incredibly passionate about what we're talking about today, and it's an honor to be able to share that with you all. Personally, I've been working esports since around 2016 when I started running tournaments online in high school for various leagues. Since then, I've gone on to produce collegiate and professional tournaments for Blizzard, as well as helping events and marketing in the Overwatch League for the LA Valiant, as well as director of UC Esports. If you were to ask me what my biggest challenges were in esports, I would say that it was just like trying to find a path. And I'm extremely lucky for that. I'm extremely lucky that the staff at UC Esports welcomed me and let me learn and grow with them. And I'm lucky that my coworkers that I've worked with throughout the years have all been very patient with me and taught me how to work as a group. But not everyone has that experience, and as organizations, it's our responsibility to make sure that people stop having those experiences. So all esports organizations need to do a better job of elevating women and other minorities. When students dedicate their free time for their passions, it's a pursuit of their goals, and they deserve to be protected by the administration. For me, the two essential ways to do this is through explicit support and established channels for crisis management. So explicit support is what I call when organizations make explicit their support of minorities. It's not enough to just assume that your students know that you want them there. So this can range from recruiting directly to those minorities to endorsing like advocating groups within the organization. For example, we have UC Berkeley's Women in Gaming Club that offshoots from the main esports org and encompasses a lot of great things. Another great idea is running workshops that directly address common discriminatory issues in esports, such as implicit association. As you can kind of tell, the common theme between all these measures is just a direct addressment and support of the marginalized groups. Some student org leaders or like school administrations may say that like, oh, we have a great culture, or like all our members just know that they belong. And sure, that might work for a group of like 20, 50, 60, but as the years go by and you grow, and we all know that esports is something that's going to only exponentially grow. The only way to ensure that you grow in the right directions throughout the years is through structural support of your marginalized groups. So moving on to like establishing channels for crisis management, this means creating a structured plan for like how you deal with the issues that students bring to you. It's important to remember that like as students, it's not easy to report things. You know, it's not easy to put yourself out there because by doing that, you are kind of putting yourself in the line of fire. I've heard of many cases where administrations turned on the victim, you know, um, bounce them from leader to leader, trying to kind of, there's like no clear path for what that victim should do. So it's vital to have clear steps to follow no matter the case. For example, we, like for UC Sports as an org, we have clear steps that are written down that we need to do if someone comes to us and says, this happened. Besides that, we have anonymous report forms because we believe it's important that students feel safe in reporting their issues. So I'd say these are like kind of the two pillars of creating a structure that all students can kind of feel safe and accepted in. Thank you, Jim.
Absolutely. No, a lot of the issues that Kathy brought up are ones that we've had to struggle with in our school, definitely. And you know, some of the implementation, some of the projects that they've implemented, I was jotting down like, oh, we need to follow up on that. So kudos to your program for being far ahead in this space and helping us all move forward and evolve. So I'm going to go from Kathy to Ariana Yo. She is the student vice president of the NTU Esports Society at Nanyang Technological University.
Hi, as Jim said, I am Ariana Yu from Nanyang Technological University. What I'm about to say would be from the perspective of a female gamer in Singapore and the trials people like us will have to face in order to emerge in the esports scene and why the female representation here is very, very small. First off, I'd like to say that the esports scene in Singapore is extremely small as it's still an emerging scene. Esports as a whole is still frowned upon in Singapore as our country emphasizes academics. They usually equate academic success as overall success in life. Like what Sean said in the previous panel, gaming is usually frowned upon as it's seen as detrimental to your grades, which is what we base our success on in this country. Singapore as a conservative society also strongly discourage just unconventional careers that don't offer financial stability. So from young, we are told that esports is just a waste of time and we should go and pursue a more viable career. As you can see, it's a extremely harsh environment for anyone to begin thinking about cultivating an esports career. And if you want to succeed, you most likely will have to leave the country, which is not something that many people want to do because all their friends and family are all in Singapore and we're quite a sheltered country, so like to leave that all behind to pursue a career, not many people would be interested in that. For example, if you were to ask a gamer in Singapore, like, who is a professional esports player that you know that actually came from Singapore, most of them will only be able to tell you about Ice Ice Ice, a Dota 2 Singaporean player. He only managed to succeed when he left Singapore to train with overseas teams. And the culture here, because it's so academics based, from young we are discouraged from playing games. For example, when I was a teenager, I only got like 1 hour of playtime a week. because my parents thought that I had to focus on my studies and that gaming would just make me less successful in the future. And like
Sorry,
some of my
that's it. Did you say an hour a week?
yes,
Okay.
every Tuesday night, yes. And then some of my peers, they would even have their gaming privileges revoked if they didn't do well for their exams. And when I entered junior college, I found out that I wanted to find people to play games with, but then all of them would tell me, "Oh, in junior college we're all gonna quit gaming. We're gonna focus on our studies." So people I used to play with just completely didn't play for 2 entire years because they wanted to do well for their A levels. And yeah, so this just makes us very unlikely to go into esports as a career. And we have a lot of culturally based problems that make females feel unwelcome in the society. For example, there's the perception of female gamers being worse at the game than men, which is a very unfair and baseless assumption. As I feel that many people used to support this point would be how female gamers not there are very few or even none that are in like major competitions like the international at Dota or CS:GO majors. But I feel that this usually arises from a lack of financial support for the female esports scene. For example, the top 100 male esports highest earning esports players have they range from like 1 million to like 4 million, but the highest female got like 300,000 globally. So this lack of financial support would discourage females from even thinking of giving up their academics or devoting their time to playing games, as the career is not viable. You can't finance yourself and your expenses. So because of this, males that want to go into the esports industry, they are able to devote their time and everything because there's potential for higher earnings. But females usually will hold like a side job or full-time job. For example, last time when I was thinking of going wanting to pursue a career in CSGO, I went to check out a female team in Singapore called Asterisk, and then I found out that the team consists of 5 girls who all held full-time jobs and only played CSGO as like a side gig because the competitions didn't give them enough money to is merely just petty cash. So I realized that it's not viable for us. Uh, Also, I feel that the perception of female gamers being bad stems from young because in our society, uh, games are seen as more of a male centric activity. So there's a lack of exposure since young. I only got into gaming because my brother uh, introduced games to me when I was very young. But when I was in an all girls secondary school, all of my peers they didn't even consider gaming as a hobby. When I said that I played games, they're all like, "Huh? I've never played a computer game before." They didn't even have devices that could handle such games. Yeah, and so in university when we play like games on the Nintendo Switch, it feels like the guys are better. But I feel this is because this is the first time that girls are starting to play games. When guys in their teenage years they're hanging around playing going to LAN centers playing games together. So the differences between female and male gamers are mostly socially based, I feel. And then the lack of female representation is also, I think, very crucial in discouraging females from taking part in competitions. Like all of the female teams right now, a lot of my friends think of them as gimmicks, and then there's no support for these teams because they go into professional competitions and then they lose to boys, and then male gamers like to make fun of that. And our highest earning female esports player is Scarlett, who plays StarCraft 2, because of the fact that she's transgender, which by right shouldn't affect anything. A lot of men like to say that, oh, she's not a real girl, so like your best player is also a man, which further drives home the point that females are bad at games, which I find is very this mindset will deter females from even trying because they don't want to be made fun of. And lastly, the attitude towards female gamers in the society, in the community, is not so welcoming. For example, when I play competitive games, we all know that we have to use our mics because communication is key for teamwork. But sometimes I feel scared because I get various reactions. Sometimes there were people who would harass me for the rest of the game, asking me if I'm a girl, adding me, and then there are some people who would just start throwing the game by following me around and then because of that we lose, and then I feel very unwelcome, and sometimes it makes me frustrated and think of quitting the game entirely. And I think this mindset surrounding how rare female gamers are, or people not taking them seriously, I think it has to change for us to even consider it as a career. Thank you, Jim.
Those are great points. Yeah, I also have heard from the female students that are part of the esports organization that I'm the faculty advisor for, that they just mute their mics because it's just so distracting when guy players that they're playing cooperatively with or competitively against hear their voice and suddenly start spending the rest of the game match making them uncomfortable by flirting with them. So it's disheartening to hear. And you're right, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we don't deal with it when boys and girls are young, it's going to just keep propagating itself as they get older and older and older and more involved in the gaming and esports ecosystem. So with that, I'm going to transition from Ariana to a person I barely know. No, Coach Joe Jacko also works with me at the University of Southern California. He is our varsity and junior varsity coach for League of Legends, as well as supports the program for a new initiative that we just tried out this last year called the PAC-U, which is a group of most of the Pac-12 schools banding together to play regular esports matches all fall. So Joe wears many hats, but he's a League of Legends master. I'm going to turn it over to him.
Yeah, hi, Jim. I'm Joe Jacko. As Jim mentioned, I'm the esports head coach at the University of Southern California, as well as the head coach at Westridge School for Girls. So previously, I spent 2 years playing at the collegiate level, and I won over $20,000 in collegiate esports scholarships with my team at Virginia Tech. When I realized I wanted to delve deeper into a career following collegiate play, I took on sort of an academic dive into the issues surrounding the space and actually tailored my education towards the pursuit of a better and more inclusive environment around the cultural issues that surround the scene. So I graduated with a degree in communication studies, where I focused heavily on gender, communication, and esports. I studied the work of women within the space of gender and communication and looked to apply their work to the budding field of esports. Deborah Tannen is one example out of the University of Georgetown. She did a lot of research within the space and communication, and I believe that the application of her work applies directly to esports. One anecdotal example that I can give might be, imagine a group of male-identifying students sit around and playing a game of baseball. One might say, I can hit the ball this high, indicating a certain height. One might say, I hit the ball this high, indicating a higher height. And the next might say, I hit the ball to the sky. It's a very competitive and one-up way of communicating with each other. And this lends itself to male communication or male identifying students in the way in which they communicate. Now, a different anecdotal example might be female identifying students within the same class that she examined, might be my parents' already contacts versus my parents' already contacts too. And so that sentiment actually copies not only the syntax of the statement, but also the sentiment, and encapsulates a more cooperative atmosphere and better addresses the cooperativeness of the space. So these examples generally display how gender identity influences the way in which we communicate and is the basis for how I believe we should approach tackling esports as it applies to gender. So I think that the first step we have to take is esports at a young age. As a lot of the previous panelists have mentioned, we have to create a space for student players to participate at a very young age so that they can normalize the synthesis of communication across gender. And we have to expose them to the styles that transcend gender in order to reduce the stigma and toxicity that these other panelists have experienced. When it comes to where I think we should implement this, I believe that, in my work with Westridge, it starts at the high school level. Students, players should be exposed to the field early and often via a high school platform. The one that we work with in the US and broadly is PlayVS. We sort of allow students to get this taste of esports, not only from a gameplay perspective, but explore other job opportunities within the field. These students should get experience behind the scenes, and they should experiment with learning how to stream, as well as create content. I think that it goes a long way for how students can get involved professionally within the space while not necessarily pursuing just gameplay only. I think that where the workforce needs to come in, and my panelists again have previously touched on this, but that's diversifying the workforce. When we can start to systematically address the problems at the high school level and then bring them to the collegiate space, we should start to see a diversification of the workforce that lends itself to women and minorities. And I believe that what the experience that I've had at Westridge is that when my student players see industry professionals that they can identify with, it's much more easy for them to say, if they can do it, I can do it too. And so that's my experience. That lends me to my experience at Westridge. The group that I work with at Westridge is extremely welcoming and inclusive. Whenever a new student joins, the greatest measure of success for me is that the student players actually welcome them with open arms and introduce them to how the club was before the pandemic. Very often they share their experiences when we were in person, and I think that that goes a long way to when we will again be in person and get to communicate once again. By instructing the extracurricular is sort of an academic way, as we do at USC, I think that I present material that allows for the student players to take notes similar to any classes they've been in before. And so while these student players at Westridge are new to the space and haven't necessarily played games all their life, they take it much more readily to it because, hey, this is just an extension of what I was doing a couple hours ago within class. So that goes a very long way as well. At USC, I think that my, academic way of instructing the game lends itself to a higher level of play in terms of meta and performance. And so while these applications work very well for the student players who are extremely new to the game, when we apply it at the USC or at the collegiate level, we actually get to see the exploration of a higher level of play where its players communicate in terms of both male forms of communication competitively, or male identifying forms of communication competitively, as well as female identifying forms of communication from a cooperative standpoint. And I think that the blend of those two styles is what makes our program unique and allows us to be a performing, cultural phenomenon within the realm of esports. And I implore every other, university to kind of take note from that and try to expand the way in which they communicate amongst themselves and take that further. Thank you.
That was great. Folks, you see why we have Joe as a coach. He is outstanding. His academic focus is exactly what we were looking for in a head coach for League of Legends, because the issues that he brought up in his brief talk today are the ones that we wrestle with and keep trying to push a boulder up a hill in terms of addressing for before he arrived, and we'll be doing it for years to come. But they're top of mind for us. It's not just about winning and doing awesome in games. It's also about really focusing and having an intent to build something that's got a healthy ecosystem and can thrive and be a welcoming, inviting organization for anyone to join. So with that, I will turn it over to Liam Slack. He is the esports manager for Bandai Namco Entertainment America Incorporated, which also is the licensee of my favorite video game series of all time, Naruto. So take as long as you like, Liam, please.
Thanks, Jim. And thank you to APRU for putting this together. It's great to have a platform to talk about equity in esports and bring up these kinds of important conversations. I'm, as you mentioned, from Bandai Namco Entertainment America. I work on the Tekken World Tour, Soul Calibur World Tour, Dragon Ball FighterZ World Tour. And of course, when it comes to equity in fighting games, we have a really, really diverse characteristic for a lot of our professional players. The highest calibers of play are really focused for us from the ground up in making sure that there's a large open space in which people can join and compete from anywhere in the world, and that regardless of who you are, where you are, and your gender, your ethnicity, anything like that, you have the ability to play in events frequently and climb the ranks to the top of the world. That's kind of a foundational basis that we approach our titles with and our competitive events with, is making sure that we build our circuitry in a way that is open not just to areas with which we're familiar, but in a way where anyone can get involved from wherever they are. And I think approaching like from a foundational basis with that kind of direction. A good example of that with Tekken is we have what's called the dojo system. It's a way by which community organizers can have their events participate against our official circuitry points and get the players that play in their local communities to be ranked upon our official ladders. And then we have that application process open to anyone, anywhere who's willing to put together a tournament. And you can be a part of the official event structures. And then your points allocation based on your dojo events are determined by the number of people from your community that end up participating. The harder your tournament is, the more people that entered, the more points that you get out of it. So it's really a testament to inclusivity in that regard. And we've seen in the past several years working with that format, a really large rise of diversity in our top players. A really great example from this, a very highly noticed example of this was last year, Arslan from Pakistan won Evo and like as a central part of the Tekken World Tour. And yeah, it really like brings more people into the space. And then to, I think, Ariana's point, when you have more of those people who you can look up to within the space, professional players or commentators on camera that you can identify with, it can inspire more people to want to go out and get involved. And as a result, we've seen a large surge of tournaments and like other highly competitive players now developing in that area. And as a result, it just inspires us more to bring our tournaments further afield, see where else we can find new budding stars, highly motivated players, and really strong communities. I will say as well, another kind of interesting point is diversity on camera. What we like to focus on and what we've been focusing on recently with, obviously this year we had to shift to online events, but we've been doing online events throughout the world. Right now, actually, we're live in the Philippines with the Tekken Online Challenge. And we really always are focusing on promoting local talent, working with commentators who both not only know their communities directly, but are representative of their communities directly. Making sure that we're like working with people who are local and keeping, obviously like merit comes first and capabilities come first, but working with diversity however we can to promote a more inclusive space is really top of mind for us whenever we're preparing for a new event and setting up in a new region. So those are kind of the fundamentals about how we go about it. We've seen really great success with this when it comes to the results and the diversity from our players and our commentators and who is involved in our events, both from not just an ethnicity standpoint, but from a gender standpoint as well. We have really strong female ambassadors in the game, Cuddlecore being the primary example within Tekken, of course. She's been fantastic and is continually on the path to success. Yeah, it's honestly really gratifying to see. And my note from a design standpoint and from a circuitry standpoint, publishers obviously are very often involved in the design of their pro events and circuitry. Focusing on having events that are not structured just around the market basis of where your titles are is a really, really good starting point for making sure that everybody has an opportunity to see someone like themselves playing on the biggest stages. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, representation is super important. Joe and I actually had a couple of meetings with some female esports pro players that have been inspiring. And when they talk about their stories of how little girls will come up to them after a match and go, wow, I just didn't even know this is a thing I could do. Like you hear that as a person of color, a minority especially, you have a moment of like, wow, yeah, I know what that feels like and how powerful that is and how important that is to give to the next generation to, slowly shift this thing back into a good direction. So with that, thank you, Liam. So we're going to shift over into the next part. I'm basically going to give each of our panelists one question. They'll have around 3 to 4 minutes to answer it. And we're going to start with John Festinger. Question for you is, as organizations engage in improving their diversity and inclusion efforts, are there any best practices that you've seen implemented anywhere?
Well, to me, I guess with my background in the NHL and the Vancouver Canucks, I think it's important to be aspirational in terms of best practices. So when I look at sports, I look at the NBA as the gold standard on almost all governance practices. under the current commissioner. I think almost by any metric. But when we're talking about equality, about non-discrimination, about promoting diversity, obviously the NBA and the work it did to create the WNBA is very significant. And no other league has done that. I'll also remind everybody that the NBA was really the first in a serious way, involving ownership, its then current ownership structures, in creating esports leagues. So there's kind of, you see a pattern here. But I want to emphasize the last part of it, because I think this is kind of, in a way, the most aspirational, but also the most important, and also the thing that fits most naturally with many, not all, university cultures. And that is that the NBA, and you could see it, especially around the playoffs this year, especially around Black Lives Matters, that activism was actively encouraged, was very much part of the game in the best possible way, that it went directly into marketing, but again, positive social marketing. The jerseys were cool. Everything about it, to me, others may differ, was done right, was done classy, but it was very much activism. And it very much made a statement. And it will be for the historians to tell us the impact it had on the US elections or not. But however you look at it, it was a very positive experience. It was well led and by the commissioner and by the players. And so I think when we look at esports, when we look at university esports, that leadership by players, that sense of activism, looking for equality. I look at my fellow panelists and the things they've called for, especially the women on the panel and their experiences. I think that's incredibly valuable. And I don't think that we should have quiet voices. I think we should have loud voices going forward. And I think we should use the NBA model, since it's by far the most successful model in sports, as the model that esports aspires to. And I'll stop there.
No, great answer. I think we've seen that, comparatively speaking, especially to your point, John, and the Black Lives Matter movement, and how the different leagues and organizations responded in terms of their fan base being supporting it, as well as the players and the coaches and the owners. It was top to bottom, like world class in terms of how they approached the issue. I'm going to turn the next question is for Nessa Harrison. And now that I've heard your description of your organization, this is even more, important question for you. What would you say are the keys to having the healthy and successful college esports organization that you all have? Because it is bracing. I know, again, growing up in America, when you have that bubble and grow up in that cocoon, and then suddenly you're let out like, oh, the world is cold and, and no one cares. And also some of them are awful. That's the shock to your system. But how do we still make that cocoon work for the students when they're on campus or involved with us?
Sure. I'd say that for our club, one of the most important things is having a strong leadership that's welcoming of everyone on campus, regardless of what they look like. I'd say that one of the strongest parts of our club is actually our HR department, and having zero tolerance, as I mentioned earlier, for any sort of discriminatory behavior. Like they've tried doing things like putting together sexual harassment workshops just to educate our community on how to appropriately handle some situations, even as a bystander. I feel like that's actually something that our administration could help us with as well. Other things would be like hosting career events to show that women and minorities have a place in esports beyond just the collegiate esports clubs, the way that I found out about it. I'd say, like Jim mentioned, one of the most important things is speaking up and using our voices. That's something that has been incredibly valuable to our club, and that is holding each other accountable. You can't just let people like say whatever they want, whether it's like racist or sexist, and deter that from being an inclusive community on campus. I'd say that that's something that like every club can work on. As I mentioned earlier, your club is a home for students everywhere, so you should try to make that as inclusive as possible, and again, hold each other accountable for any sort of mistakes they might make, and like teach them and be an educational resource for students who want to get more involved in esports. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. You all couldn't see me while she was talking, but I'm jotting down the notes of, oh, HR department, that's a very good idea. So very insightful, really good tidbits. We might be following up to get more detail on how do we make sure we can model our organization to have that type of culture throughout. So next question is for Kathy Guh. Question for you from our crosstown rivals, UCLA. What have been the more successful efforts you all have done in your organization to improve equity and inclusion?
So I think that we have a lot of similarities with Nessa's org in the sense that we truly do try to put our minorities and marginalized groups in a spot where they feel comfortable speaking out and being themselves. The ways we do this is by having mandatory workshops for all our staff and players with UCLA professionals. So we've brought in nutritionists, physical therapists, sexual harassment and discrimination trainers, all like professionals from UCLA. So we try to make use of our resources as a club sport at UCLA. What we've done is hire a very large amount of female staff. Approximately half of all our board members are women, and actually 4 out of 7 of this year's intern class are women, including, if we count all of our graphic designers and stuff, I'd say we have a majority of women on our staff actually, which is pretty unique for an esports organization for sure. When we're back on campus, we plan to start a women in gaming initiative, and we use our esports training center as a hub for that. Besides that, we have an anonymous report form that we use to make sure that even if students may not feel comfortable speaking to us directly out of fear of retaliation, privacy, we have ways that they can communicate with us no matter what.
Those are great. Thank you so much. Again, taking great notes from all the awesome work you all are doing in the space. So my next question is for Ariana Yo. What do you think universities can do better in engaging with underrepresented groups within esports?
All right. So from my point of view, currently, the Singapore varsity scene is not very supportive. So I think number one would be getting more support for esports events. For example, as Sean said in the earlier panel, our sort of rival university would be NUS, but NUS esports, they are varsity society, so they have more support, and like he said, their teams train regularly as compared to ours. We are struggling to get varsity status for our club, so our club is quite unknown, and every time we want to host an event, we will have to email the school, and it's hard for us to get funding. As a result, we can't really host a lot of events. And one example of the university level, we had a Valorant inter-university competition recently. However, you can see the differences in the university's emphasis on esports, because NUS teams, they have been training for like weeks already, and we only sent in one NTU team, and the NTU team formed like the night before the competition. So yeah, and like the reason why is because we're always emphasizing on our academics, and a lot of the players say, because we don't have support from the university, so they think that it's not something we should prioritize over our studies. So because of this, we don't really have sponsorship for esports teams or events, and I think that doing that would be a great step in encouraging people to pursue it as a career. Because if your university doesn't even see it as viable enough to support you, why would you want to take it up by yourself? Yeah. And esports in our society is always seen as lower than sports. We don't have the same visibility, the same promotion. So sports usually there are large scale events, the university will support them. And for esports, we kind of have to do our own promotion, and it's a very small community because we don't have a large outreach. People don't take our CCA seriously. For example, I'm from business. I'm specializing in banking and finance, and I had a friend once tell me, "Oh, you have to join an academic CCA in order to boost your portfolio. You shouldn't join like esports because it's not going to help you in the future." Yeah. So stuff like this, it really deters people from even thinking of joining our CCA because they feel like, oh, university is important to choose something related to what you want to do in the future. And if you join like a game CCA, that is just a waste of time. So like a lot of this mindset, the university can really help to change that by actually supporting us and change their mindset towards esports. Maybe offer esports or game related modules that students can take to educate them on it. Like it actually is viable, and the university will support you. And females can actually make it in the scene, stuff like that. Like our CCA, we don't even have our own gaming venue. We don't have any equipment from the school. All of it we have to pay for it with our own club funds, and like we have to get sponsorship from other organizations when we want to host events with prizes. So I think like this lack of support really deters anybody from thinking of it as a viable career. But I also feel that uh, education institutions before university, like junior college or secondary school, should start opening up to the idea of having esports as a CCA that you can join, like a activity that you can join. Because now a lot of people, when they join sports earlier before university, when they go into university, they want to carry on the same sports. But because it's not even heard of in junior college or polytechnic levels, people don't really when they go into uni, they don't even consider it because they want to join something that they've been in before. And because of this lack of continuity, many people never really expose themselves to esports from a younger age, and as a result they don't think that is actually an option to consider. Yeah.
Totally. No, I think you're dealing, it sounds like, with not just school issues at the university level, but also the cultural issues you talked about earlier, where it's just seen and it's looked down on as a waste of time as gaming. And honestly, in the States, gaming was seen as that, I'd say, up until maybe around 10, 15 years ago. And by some segments, they would still make that argument. But it's gotten a lot more professionalized, and people understand the size of the business is what's giving it respect here. And so I think, but we still have a long way to go. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Coach Joe Jacko. Question for him is, what have been the biggest differences between your role in coaching at USC and coaching an all-female team at Westridge?
Yeah. Honestly, there aren't like too many large differences. I would say at the level at which I would say the only one I can think of might be the level at which they compete. The players at USC have been playing individually for years, whereas the players at Westridge have only begun playing the game close to 6 months ago, last spring. So for Westridge specifically, the focus on the game is much less on the high level macro and meta of the game, and it's rather focused on developing a strong foundation and understanding of the game. Tailoring the experience to the students, it largely stays the same. A lot of what I'm focusing on at Westridge, again, is more conductive to an academic style. They thrive in an environment, honestly, where they can take notes and learn learn within their extracurriculars, similar to the classes that they're in. Honestly, the one thing about coaching that transcends both the high school and the collegiate level is that I get to see firsthand the growth of the student players. And I think that that goes far beyond any sort of single metric that I could judge between high school to collegiate. What's important here is that we focus on creating a pipeline that leads students from high school to the collegiate level to the professional scene. I don't think we're anywhere near that, even in the US. I think that when we can focus on introducing esports at a young age, and again, like I talked about in the previous part of the panel, is if we can start at a young age dealing with the communication, the gender and communication aspects that influence the way in which students communicate online and offline, is kind of how we can start tackling that issue. And then we'll build out that pipeline to the collegiate level and further into the professional level. Similar to any traditional sport, there's a sense of team camaraderie that I get to experience playing with the girls at Westridge. And there's a camaraderie aspect that's amplified by this sort of separation. They share photos of themselves and what they're doing, what they've done in the past. They share, learn, laugh together. And I think that drastically influences how they are able to communicate as a team. And I think that every single day when I get to coach on Tuesdays and Thursdays, those are my favorite days of the week. I know everyone is used to the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, but I think that when I get to experience playing with the student players and in their atmosphere, this environment that they've developed for themselves, that's where I'm happiest. And that's what makes my job special, is that normal weekdays become extra special when I get to play and experience the game with them and cheer them on every day of the week. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
You would think after teaching for the last almost year, I would know to turn the mute button off. Final question is for Liam Slack. So Liam, question is, do you feel like the level of inclusiveness and its importance to a gamer's culture, the players that play the game or the viewers of the game when it comes to streaming, do they vary by genre or title?
Yeah, good question, Jim. Thanks. Yeah, I think it does. There's a lot of different ways and factors that can affect that, right? I think from a obvious standpoint, like on a title by title basis, there are games that have characters that are more diverse and representative, and this isn't from this is more of a game development standpoint than an esports standpoint, right? I can use Tekken as an example where we introduce new characters from different cultures and regions of the world, and that can help inspire and like bring more diverse communities and interest them in playing characters that are from their area that fight with their styles and things like that. But there's other great examples of games that have been doing this as well. Rainbow Six Siege has like different operators from countries all around the world, and it's a great way of inspiring diversity for inclusion in players. I think as well, genre-wise, it can have an effect. We obviously work primarily esports-wise with fighting games, which are 1v1 titles, like head-to-head. And as some of our female colleagues on the panel here had mentioned, that turning on their mics when it comes to team play and like competitive-based games that require team environment and focus to win, that can be an intimidating step to overcome. So just that natural barrier can obviously create more narrow like diversity within any given title. And there's also the note that with team-based play comes natural societal, not natural, it shouldn't be natural, but societal references where, you know, you are someone who's like in a team and you want to surround yourselves with like-minded individuals, and in trying to do so, you pick people that are the same gender as you or are the same race as you, and like that's then slowly forms into a largely non-diverse section, right? So with team-based games and large team-based organizations that enter the space, really focusing on making sure that there's diversity within your ranks and that there's opportunity for a diverse set of players is a really big challenge, because you want to get everybody on the same page, and the more like different your players are, the harder it can be to bring that coordination together sometimes, or at least it can be perceived that way. So I think that's one of the largest things to try and wrestle with from a team-based play professional esports standpoint. And it's an interesting challenge that right now we don't have the circuitry to take on. We all have 1v1 titles, but it's something I'd love to explore in the future.
Totally. No, thank you. Great answer. Yeah, clearly there are a lot of challenges here. This next section is going to be around 10 minutes, I believe. Yeah, I think we're still good on time. Basically, I'm going to be reading questions from the audience, and for the panelists, just jump in. Don't be shy about jumping in and just starting the answer. And if anybody wants to add to that answer, go for it. The first one looks like the most upvoted was from Matthew. His question/statement is: it's interesting that esports brings people together, and yet there is an ugliness that can come out with cyberbullying, sexism, etc. how or who can police that?
I can jump in first from a publisher standpoint, of course. Again, I'm on the esports side, so largely when it comes to regulation of discriminatory behavior, cyberbullying, or generally, foul conduct breaking behavior, like I'm focused on the esports front, but regulation within titles has come a long way when it comes to publisher standpoints and automation of and then detection of issues along those lines. And I think controlling for that within spaces within the games, obviously like chat censors and retroactive banning is something that's been improved a lot in recent years. Now, I think one of the next steps for that is for other media discourse locations, Discord, your other social medias of the world, having a tighter realm on like an ability to like police those spaces from their standpoints, because it requires the owner of the product to really be taking comprehensive action against and defenses for the people that need it, those kinds of spaces. And I think I saw John raising his hand, so I'll throw to him.
Yep, go for it.
Well, I'll just very quickly go back to my one of my initial answers, which is good governance structures. And good governance structures will encourage and give permission for clear and decisive action to be taken when discriminatory events happen. And I'll tie in my NBA example and the example of what happened to Donald Sterling and how unequivocal the NBA was in dealing with that, and how that in fact set the NBA up for success in the past couple of years in a very big way, and created a large separation between them and the other leagues. I mean, woe unto Major League Baseball, for example, which has been, just a governance disaster in more ways than can be imagined. So I think it's very important that esports get on this train if esports is going to actually live up to its incredible potential.
Totally agree. And that was what, oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, okay. So I think that is actually everybody, the whole community's job to police that. Like, for example, if you're just playing a game and you see someone being harassed, you should actually try and stand up for that person, because it feels very good to have support from someone who is not in the same community as you, but like fights for your rights. Like, for example, I remember back in 2014, I was playing a Counter-Strike game and I had a team of pups. So I didn't know them. And I remember I used my mic to give a call out. And immediately after that, someone started harassing me, like, oh, are you a girl? And then started like flirting. And then after that, I felt really bad. I remember the humiliation. And then I didn't want to use my mic for the rest of the game. But then I had a teammate who immediately turned on his mic, and then he was like, hey man, stop that. Like, just because she's a girl doesn't mean that she shouldn't be playing the game. And then he addressed me, and then he was like, it's okay, use your mic, we won't say anything about it. And that really made an impact on me, and I still remember it, because to have someone stand up for you, even though they don't go through what you're going through, it shows that there is support for you in the community, and not everybody will judge you and stuff. And like, for example, in my club, we're not very tolerant of these kind of racism or sexist remarks. We always shoot them down. Like, for example, when we have a Twitch stream and then people start like saying derogatory comments, we would warn them like, this is a safe place. You shouldn't be attacking anyone, and we won't stand for it. And then people who continue to harass, we will block them from our Twitch stream. Even though it means losing a few streamers, it doesn't matter, because our gamers should feel comfortable playing games, no matter who they are or where they come from. Yeah, so it's really everyone's job as a community to stop these cyberbullies and stuff, to make people feel more welcome to join the community.
Absolutely. And I think that I just got the heads up that we should wrap it up. So that was our one question from the audience. Sorry, everyone. I think there is a way that someone will follow up, but I appreciate them all. They're all really solid questions, and we might be able to find some way to communicate the answers back to you, or at least give you feedback. So thank you so much to our panelists. That was extremely enlightening. What's interesting is that everyone kind of approached the same challenge that we have at the center of esports, whether it's from the collegiate level, professional level, academic, et cetera, from publisher level. The challenge that we all have is to figure out how do we deal with this problem before it becomes part of our system permanently, and it becomes even harder to take on or remove because we've let it fester for so long. And it seems like the one common thread from all these answers and all the feedback that we've been talking about and how to address this is focusing on the areas that you can control and making sure that you overcorrect and make absolutely sure that your organization is open to anyone and everyone to participate in. The more open we can make sure we can make these organizations, and the more we can inject that thinking and that perspective to a younger gamer and younger consumers over time, that's going to make this ecosystem healthier and make esports stronger for years to come. Thanks so much. Have a great evening. I'll turn it back over to APRU.
Thank you so much, Mr. Huntley, and our panelists. Once again today, thank you so much for all of our speakers who've participated for an engaging and influential discussion on the strategies to cultivate Hong Kong as a hub for esports, and also ways to build inclusive and diverse communities in the Asia Pacific. Please note that at 1 p.m. we will also be featuring the Borregos Invitational Tournament. I highly encourage you to tune in and also find out who the winner is. To find out more details about APRU, please feel free to visit their website at www.apru.org. Last but not least, please don't forget to share your experience at the MetaGames Conference today, and also tag us at #Delve2020 and at APRU1997. Thank you so much, everybody, and I wish you a lovely weekend ahead.